Talk Hour at BPR live from the Boston Public Library. With September temps in the air, it's actually around the corner. Back to school season. We want to ask you, as fewer and fewer American parents are choosing to send their kids to public schools, what is going on? Are you happy, parents, with the education your kids are getting? What do you teachers think? All things back to school next.
I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Jim Browdy. Then we're speaking with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley on the future of her Democratic Party, with new analysis in the New York Times showing that voter registration is way down compared to Republicans. Could the answer lie in a push for better, cheaper, free public transit? As she reintroduces the Freedom to Move Act, we'll get her thoughts. It's all ahead on the 11 o'clock hour of BPR on GBH and NEPM live from the BPL.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Forecasters have issued a tropical storm warning for some of North Carolina's Outer Banks up to southern Virginia. Hurricane Erin is passing by. It won't make landfall, but its Outer Banks will sweep the Carolina coast. Forecasters are warning of flooding and storm surge. Several states are under heat cautions today. Extreme heat warnings are posted in western Mississippi as well as in the desert Southwest. It could hit 120 degrees in Death Valley, California today. Dr. Ariel Cohen is with the National Weather Service. He says people need to take this seriously.
Temperatures this warm will be capable of creating an environment where extreme heat-related illnesses and even fatalities are a possibility.
The triple-digit temperatures will spread through parts of northwest Arizona and southern and central Nevada today. The Texas State House is set to hold a preliminary vote as early as today on a new congressional map. The GOP plan aims to create new districts that could send up to 5 more Republicans to the U.S. House. Houston Public Media's Andrew Schneider reports the State House and Senate have different versions of the plan.
A Texas House committee rushed through its alternative map as one of the first orders of business after Democrats returned on Monday and the chamber reestablished a quorum. The main difference between the House and Senate map is in the Houston area, where the House's proposed 9th congressional district would expand to include the largely rural and conservative Liberty County. That would all but guarantee that the district, which has long been represented by Congressman Al Green, would shift from Democratic to Republican. For NPR News, I'm Andrew Schneider in Houston.
Separately, state lawmakers in California have introduced measures to start redistricting in their state to try to send up to 5 Democrats to the U.S. House. They say they're responding to lawmakers in Texas. Israeli troops have come under a rare attack by more than a dozen militants in southern Gaza. Military officials say it may have been an attempt to abduct an Israeli soldier. NPR's Daniel Estrin has more from Tel Aviv.
Israel's military says more than 15 militants emerged from tunnel shafts near an Israeli outpost in southern Khan Yunis. Israel says Gaza militants opened fire, launched anti-tank missile fire, and infiltrated the military post, severely wounding at least one soldier. The military says it killed most of the Gaza militants. Hamas said its fighters, including a suicide bomber, killed Israeli soldiers. Israel has not commented on those claims. A suicide bombing would be a very rare Hamas tactic in the war. The military says it's carrying out strikes on the edge of Gaza City and calling up more soldiers for a planned takeover of the city, as Israel weighs whether to accept a ceasefire proposal Hamas has endorsed. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell has joined a group of Democrat attorneys general who are suing the Trump administration over its move to restrict federal funding for the victims of crimes unless states cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. The Eagle Tribune reports that the lawsuit filed Monday in U.S. District Court in Rhode Island alleges the Department of Justice doesn't have the authority to withhold more than $1 billion in congressionally approved Victims of Crime Act grants. These grants provide support to victims of crimes to cover costs like medical bills, funeral expenses, as well as lost wages. And despite today's rain, much of the region has been experiencing a significant drought this summer. Where rainfall isn't the only factor, there's also the heat. So says Rob Megnia. He's a senior hydrologist at the National Weather Service.
The first half of this month, we didn't have any rainfall, and then it also got very hot. So that caused soils to dry out much faster. When it starts to get hot and dry, agriculture is going to rely on more outsourcing for water. That also causes groundwater wells to go down.
The state has classified the drought on Cape Cod as level 2 on a scale of 0 to 4. Nantucket has a mild drought at level 1, and the rest of the state is considered normal around now. Rainfall for July was below average in the southeastern part of the state. In sports, the Red Sox off today. They open a series with the Yankees in the Bronx tomorrow. In the forecast, we've got a high surf advisory remaining in effect until 8 a.m. on Saturday, thanks to Erin. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Eric and Wendy Schmidt through the Schmidt Family Foundation, working toward a healthy, resilient, secure world for all. On the web at theschmidt.org. This is NPR.
You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Thank you. I'm Margery Egan here with media maven Sue O'Connell, who is in for Jim Browdy, who is on vacation. Again, that's right. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. A couple of programming notes. Ayanna Pressley is going to be with us here at the Boston Public Library in about a half an hour to talk about what's going on with the Democrats, what's going on with the Epstein files, and a bunch of other stuff. We're also going to be joined August 26th by Mayor Michelle Wu. She'll be with us right here at the library from 12 to 1, and her opponent in the mayoral race, Josh Kraft, will be with us August 27th at noontime. Hello, Sue.
Good day, Margery Egan. How are you today?
Well, I'm doing very well. So glad to see you again.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
So it doesn't feel like it particularly right now, but it is still summer. And as you may have noticed, moms and dads and teachers and kids out there, the school year is just around the corner. But did you know that public school enrollment in Massachusetts is on the decline? It's been on the decline since the pandemic. A new study from BU finds that public schools in the states have lost around 16,000 students since 2020. Private school enrollment has jumped 14% in that same time, and the number of homeschool kids has skyrocketed. Whoops, that's my phone. I forgot to turn it off. Excuse me. Homeschool students' enrollment has jumped 45% since 2020. So why do you think this is happening? Our number is 877-301-8970. Are you happy or unhappy with our educational system? Or if you're in it, whether you're a teacher, a parent, or a kid, are you happy with the education your child is getting? Congress, as you know, has just approved the first national school voucher plan, which will help all but the wealthiest families pay for private school and other educational expenses, but states have to opt in. Do you want Massachusetts to opt in to that program, allowing you to get some of that money for educational expenses or not? And then there's a political problem here. The New York Times just did a big report on this national program. They focus mainly on Florida, but what they found is that white liberals really want things to kind of stay the same the way they are. They want to support the public schools. They're not like in favor of charters, etc. But black and particularly Hispanic voters who went heavily to Trump in the last election, they want these changes, often because they are in school systems that are not functioning. So what do you think? 877-301-8970 is the number to call or text. What do you think of the school systems? Is the public education system in trouble in the United States of America? Should it be in trouble? Do we need more massive reform? Would you like to get money to go to a private school? I don't think you're going to get enough to quite swing a private school.
I actually figured this out, Margery.
You figured it out?
I figured it out because we were trying to figure out how this national school voucher program works.
Yeah.
Like who benefits from it. And I figured it out. So a family or a person can donate $1,700 to a school voucher program.
Right.
You get a tax credit for that. And then the families, they can only donate it, I believe, to places that have scholarships.
Yes.
So the family could actually get a full ride for a voucher program based on how much money they get coming in. So it could be free.
Yeah, it could be.
Or it could be just covering
yeah.
expenses.
Yeah, in the Times report out of Florida, people could get up to $13,000 a year, which is a lot of money, but for very exclusive private schools, it's probably not enough. The average around the country is around that, but I think they're much more expensive here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts from what I've heard. But anyway, what do you think? School is starting. Are you happy with where your kids are going to school? We hear all the time in Massachusetts that one of the issues here, and we still have the best schools.
We still have the best schools
in the country, although I wonder if that's because we have the richest parents and the most highly educated parents in the country, how much that's got to do with it. But in any case, we're still number one, even though overall the United States is gone. We used to be first in the world. Now we're down to like 17th or 20th, depending on which survey you're looking at. So things have gone down. But are you happy with it? You know, charter schools went down 2-1 in a Massachusetts state ballot question a few years ago. Jim and I always argue about the teachers union, but he's not here today, so we won't have to argue about that. But what do you think as school starts? Are you happy? Are you not happy? Do you think, and this is one last thing I'll throw into the mix, I think it is very difficult for people who are working, when single moms working full time, or it's two families, and I mean two parents and both people are working full time. It's hard to fund all the time off from schools. It costs you a lot of money. February vacation, April vacation. I've said this a million times. Why not say it again? Margery, camps in the summertime are very expensive. So the 14 weeks is very difficult for people to fund. 877-301-89.
And I might just also add, Margery, one of the challenges I think we have with education is when our kids are in school, we care a lot. And then our kids are out of school, and we care less, right?
That's right.
We may not care. I mean, I'm not saying that people are apathetic. We obviously, I think most of us understand how important a free public education that is good and is great, helps our society, helps our community, helps our citizens. But at the same time, I spend a lot less time now that my child is 25 worrying about elementary school and high school than I did when she was actually in it. And that's a challenge I think we have with making lasting change, because as soon as you're free to get the heck out, you're out.
That's true, and you may not be so happy to have your property taxes go up.
Exactly.
Andrea from New Hampshire, you are first. Thanks for calling. Hi.
Hi, I love you guys both so much. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks for calling. What do you think?
So I wanted to just give my experience. We had two children go through school. My son went to our local public school, and the outcome was okay. We sacrificed. We sent our daughter to private high school, which happened to coincide during COVID, and the experience was night and day between her peers that were in public school during COVID and her. She was working 8 hours a day, getting the work done. It was just incredible, the difference. And for me, it came down to some of the bureaucracy. I have friends that are teachers now, and I think sometimes we get in our own way as a public school system.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is between the requirements, and Margery will correct me on this, and I'm just talking from personal experience, Andrea. My kid actually went to a private kindergarten, a public school, and then in middle school, a public school, but because of chronic illnesses, I had to homeschool her, which I'm... was not by choice. Not by choice.
How you did that.
And I homeschooled her on and off through high school. We moved to Boston. She went to one of the high schools here in Boston, but was unable. And I'm sharing this with her permission. Her illness kept her from graduating, so she dropped out, took a GED, and she's graduated from Bunker Hill. So happy end of the story there. But leading all that to say that the requirements on my friends who are teachers in private schools versus on public schools is also very different, especially during COVID, because remember, the private schools were able to make their teachers do things, which we could disagree or agree with, depending on your point of view, where the public schools, the unions were really trying to protect the health of the teachers when we didn't know what we knew.
Right.
So the balance of what you can make a private school teacher do versus a public school teacher do, I think is always not an apples to apples comparison. What do you think, Andrea?
I always agree with Margery on this issue. At the end of the day, there's so much red tape and bureaucracy, and the way some of the school systems, public, and the money is questionable. There's a
Andrea.
new way we teach math every other year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, many schools, Andrea, thank you for the call. We learned earlier this year that the reading scores were absolutely horrible in Massachusetts for younger kids, and we discovered here and around the country that we were teaching the wrong method of reading, and we had moved too far away from phonics, and we were supposed to this whole word identification thing, and I thought that was incredible that kids weren't learning to read. We were adopting this new way. They were reading before, then they stopped being able to read as well, and it took years to dawn on people.
But that's to my point too, Margery. We don't want to be stagnant, right? We don't want to keep doing things the way we have always done things in teaching, but we also don't know if it's going to work until we have either ruined an entire generation or we've elevated them, and then trying to keep up with the changes in society, in screens, and how they do numbers and spelling and cursive writing. Who writes cursive? I mean, when the revolution comes, you and I are going to be able to communicate via a landline and cursive.
That's right.
Because the kids are never going to know what we're talking about. So it'll work out well.
Our number is 877-301-8970. Summer is almost over. School is around the corner. How do you feel about the education your kid is getting, or the educational system in general? And you mentioned the pandemic. Glenn Youngkin from Virginia, he was like elected down there basically over anger over the pandemic and the length of time the schools were closed. It turns out, in retrospect, we did keep them closed too long, but as you point out, we didn't know that at the time. And there were a lot of people, school teachers or school administrators, that were maybe had some health issues, and they were obviously worried about being around a bunch of 6-year-olds.
And I also just want to say about the criticism of closing the schools, if we had all been better citizens and wore masks and done things like we were supposed to, we probably could have opened the schools more quickly. So the difference between, giving up your great civil right to not wear a mask is what kept the schools closed a little bit longer than they needed to. I don't want to get... I like to talk about masks in case we need to generate calls and texts.
Okay. Suzanne from Dennis, thank you for calling.
Hi.
You're on the air.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the issues that you're... Their feedback. Okay. I was a school teacher for 25 years, and I taught in Springfield, Massachusetts, which is an inner city school, a really mixed population. And I don't think that vouchers are going to help the problem. I think what we need to do is change the way school systems are funded totally. Because when you have individual communities where people live funding those schools, and you have a poor community like Springfield and a lot of the Boston schools, the money that's spent in the suburbs is astronomically higher than the inner city schools. And those kids just don't get the same services and the same kinds of opportunities that would benefit them. If you give them vouchers to go to a different school, you have a whole issue of transportation. A lot of the inner city parents don't have the capability of getting their kids to those other schools. I just think that it's waving a red flag at the educational system, and it's going to just tear it apart.
Suzanne, the point you're making too, I think, which some folks who don't have kids or haven't been in the school system for a while don't understand, but in the wealthier communities, right, they're doing fundraisers within the wealthier communities to add services, build buildings, send the kids on trips that parents are easily able to donate $3,000 a year because of how much money they're making. And then even though I know someone's going to call in and tell us that the cost per student in Boston is high.
Very high.
But they're also not getting the support of the fundraising. We also don't have the support from the universities and schools here, which are here tax-free and are often not living up to their end of the bargain to make sure they're giving back to the schools. And, the challenges, my daughter went to a Boston public school, high school, the challenges that many of these kids have in urban districts and in rural districts take more than just we're going to have a trip to Washington, D.C. We need more guidance counselors in the school. We need all sorts of administrative support that the budget just doesn't allow for, even though we're paying a lot per money. What do you think of it? Suzanne, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And if you don't acknowledge the fact that a lot of the kids that are in the inner city schools and the more difficult schools need more services, then those kids aren't going to get those services. People complain about the fact that it costs more per pupil to teach a student, say, in Springfield or Boston, but they're coming into the system with a lot less of the skills that kids in the suburbs come in with. And I know I don't want to poke fun at the kids in the suburbs, but, if you have a better starting jumping off point, you're going to do better in school, period. And there's got to be some way to equalize the whole issue, and we're not doing that.
Good call.
Well,
Thank you,
Susan, that was a great call. A lot of people talk about regionalization of the schools, that maybe way back in the 70s when busing was such tore Boston apart, maybe what we should have done is mixed up all the towns. The Brookline, Wellesley, all the towns instead. And by the way, we should point out, though, this is a little counterintuitive, that this study about public enrollment in Massachusetts schools found that the wealthiest 20% of public school districts lost the most students.
Mm-hmm.
So it's students from the expensive places like Newton, like Weston, which is the richest town in the state, like Cambridge and like Brookline, where I live. Those are the school systems that lost the most kids. So that wasn't a money issue, you would presume, in those towns. Those were places where they were not happy with the public schools situation that was
do we
offered.
know that they left, or we just don't have kids? We have a huge baby drop-off here.
Yeah, they left.
We do have a low number of births and kids that has been predicted for the past 25 years. So we're also seeing lower enrollments just basically because there are fewer kids.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's what the story says. It says that the enrollment shifts were had to do with, well, they don't know what it had to do with, but you saw a lot of people during the pandemic, just that when the schools were still closed, go to private school then, and maybe they haven't.
Because they were open, they wanted to get their kids out of the house. I will tell you, the homeschooling thing. Anybody who does this by choice, my hat's off to you. But at the same time, the level of education that some of these kids get in homeschooling is not great.
Well, I don't know how you did it, Sue. Okay.
I don't either.
You got a job
I
here.
Sniff glue. I picked a bad week to sniff glue, so I'm sniffing glue.
That's right. You got a job here. You got a job on NBC 10 Boston. You got a job running the newspaper over there in the South End. I don't know how you had time to homeschool. Was this for 45 minutes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday?
Luckily, and again, it's also your kid, right? Kid is, you can have 5 kids, and they're all 5 different types of learners, right? My kid is a great rule follower. She wanted to do well. She wanted to get A's. She reached out to teachers. She wasn't afraid to engage with teachers. But you can imagine a shy kid, and you're saying, go ahead, email your teachers before we were all doing the Zoom stuff. But, go ahead, do a FaceTime with your teacher. It can be really inhibiting. So it's a different size fits all. But I think the funding part of this, I think you're absolutely right in how we fund things, is it just seems unfair that if you were born to a certain zip code, 2 blocks over, I live in Roxbury, and then less than a mile away is Brookline, and why should I have a less excellent educational experience in Boston than if I take 2 steps over and I'm in Brookline?
I mean, do you look at the number of people that are in the Boston public schools that are on long waiting lists to get into Metco?
Yeah.
Because they're trying to get out of the Boston school system to go to Andover, Wellesley,
and those
Brookline,
are hours-long round
And you
trips.
notice how many people that become successful politicians
Went to Metco.
out of Boston went to Metco schools. Yeah, Darren and Sudbury, thank you for calling.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I was just calling to share a little bit of my experience. I have 12-year-old twins. They were originally raised in Maryland and went to what was said to be a very good school system there. But my son in particular had some learning challenges, and for some reason they couldn't accommodate him when we were there. But after the pandemic, we moved back up to Massachusetts, and it was a complete 180 experience for him in particular.
Wow.
Just because the school systems here were so accommodating and able to give individual attention that it really turned him around. He went from dreading and hating going to school to absolutely loving and looking forward to going to school.
Darren, I had a similar experience only here in Massachusetts, where I was in a suburb, and as my daughter was having these chronic illness problems that were unable to be diagnosed, we had a terrible experience. The IEPs were not used. She was put on the wrong bus on a regular basis. I mean, it was just this ongoing problem. And then we moved to Boston, and she had great support from the teachers. And again, it's this inconsistency, even from state to state, city to city, is unfair to our kids. So, Darren, I'm glad you're enjoying Massachusetts, and good luck with those twins.
You know, we get these, and I'm getting a lot of them today, too. The teachers point out that they're not supposed to be daycares. You know, we're not supposed to be taking care of the kids all day long.
Why not?
Well, I think that the problem with that argument is that this is the world that we live in now. Everybody's got to work.
Got to adapt.
Everybody's got to work.
Plus, you're showing movies that whole last week of school.
Yeah, that's probably true. But I think it's fairly obvious you need wraparound schools. The schools in Boston close fairly early, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And you don't want to send your kid home to an empty apartment, and you may not have the money for an after-school program. I mean, it seems we have to have wraparound schools. You see the kids that in the good charters or the good schools like Nativity Prep. It's an inner-city school here in Boston, which takes kids of color. That we had some of these kids on the show. They were unbelievable. They're 8th grade. They sound like they're ready for the debating team at the UN. They were like 13 and 14 years old. The school's open from 7 in the morning until 7 at night. Now, that's a Catholic school. They can get away with paying people what you don't pay the teachers, and I realize that's an issue with charter schools as well. But on the other hand is the issue about some of the charter schools have these really great, young, enthusiastic 23-year-olds who are ready to work, 60 hours a week. I don't think you necessarily want to work 60 hours a week your entire life, but you take advantage of that enthusiasm when these people are young, like the great Roxbury charter school that's right near where you live. It's a great school. Do they pay the $120,000 that you get in the Boston schools? No, they don't, but they have a great record, and I think it's a lot about the tremendous enthusiasm of some of those people who do not stay, by the way, as teachers their whole life.
Right. And again, Margery, this also folds into our ongoing argument about how we want to support families, we want to support children, and then when it comes to the schooling, it is sort of a second thought. Pay people more, hire more people. What are we doing with our tax dollars? We want to hear from you. We're going to take a quick break, and then we want more of your calls and texts talking about how you're feeling about going back to school for your kids. Are you happy with the education? How do you feel about the vouchers? We want to hear from you. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM. We are live from the BPL and streaming over at the youtube.com/GBH News.
In Soviet Russia, bootleg records were not pressed on vinyl. They were made from medical x-rays.
But when you held it up to the window, this record, it was an x-ray and it had a pair of skeletal hands on it. I was like, well, what is this? Who made this?
Who made it, and how collectors are still spinning Soviet bone music. Next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Babson College. You can learn to lead with impact and become a driving force for change. Babson's virtual graduate admissions workshop is on August 27th. Registration at babson.edu/gradworkshop. And Compass on the Bay, an assisted living community in South Boston dedicated to those with Alzheimer's and related dementias, featuring research-based therapeutic programming. More at compassonthebay.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. We are broadcasting on GBH and NEPM up in the western part of the state. And we're so thrilled to be on NEPM in the western part of the state. Anyway, we're talking about schools. The year is starting. It's right around the corner. Everybody's going to go back. What do you think? Are you happy with the education your kid is getting? Are you happy if you're a teacher or a parent? Are you worried about this? If you opted out of the public schools, as more and more Americans are doing, to go to God love them, these parents, homeschooling.
Ugh.
I don't know how the hell they do it.
I don't either.
Homeschooling or a parochial school or a private school, or are you doing something really out of the box. We had a story of something called unschooling, self-directed learning gains unfold in Massachusetts, someplace in Sunderland called North Star, where they do something called self-directed learning. I read the story. I don't understand really what they're doing.
Yeah, you got to have the right kid. My kid went to a Montessori preschool and kindergarten, and at the end of it, they said this is not for her because she needed to be told what to do. She didn't like the self-direction. I mean, it would be great if we could just have our kids analyzed and then not psychoanalyzed, but learning analyzed, and then send them in the direction that would work best for them. Whether it's a really strict, rigid. If it's freestyle, or if they should just go off and become a pop star and buy us a house.
You know, a lot of people are texting about the idea of funding everybody equally, and that's what they tried to do in the Education Reform Act in Massachusetts back in the 90s. But the problem is, as you pointed out earlier, that in wealthy communities, you know, you'll have some rich parent buy 20 Apple MacBooks for the...
But that's also why you move to Newton, so you can go to Mecca. You want to go to Mecca High School, right?
That's right.
You want to go there. So you move to Newton, you pay the higher tax rate, and then your kids go there, they go to college, you sell your house, and you move. And that's the whole economy and the housing is sort of built around the education. So that's the challenge. Let's talk to Roger in New Hampshire. Roger, we're taking your call.
Hi, Roger.
Well, thank you, and thanks for taking. Hi, thanks for taking my call. I applaud Sue's comments about different children and different needs.
Right.
And I agree 100% with the teacher of 25 years from Springfield that we have to absolutely change the way we pay for education. In New Hampshire, we used to have donor towns and receiver towns. Wealthier towns paid extra. That extra money went to receiver towns. Now New Hampshire is dead last behind Mississippi in
really
supporting higher education, the university system. And it was only 20 years ago with Gene Shaheen as governor that we had public kindergarten. So all of us have to step up to the plate and pay our fair share. The tax system has to change in New Hampshire, and there's no two ways about it.
Wow, I didn't know New Hampshire. Thank you for the call, Roger. I didn't know Hampshire was rivaling Mississippi. That's pretty depressing, isn't it? I didn't think things were so desperate up there in New Hampshire. Anyway, what do you think about merit pay? I'm a big proponent of merit pay. Jim always says it's a terrible idea. We're going to have favoritism. Well, you have favoritism in every office. But you know, if you are a computer person, you are a math science person, you come out of college with that, you have an opportunity. Well, now it's changing because of AI, but at least until recently, you had an opportunity to get a big six-figure job, like right out of the box, right? I think it's hard to persuade people in those specialties to come teach in the public schools because in Massachusetts anyway, you're going to be struggling because you're not going to make enough money, even if you have two teachers' salaries in the house because housing is so expensive.
I think a lot of our problems in the world, Margery, could be solved with investment in daycare for working parents with infants, and Head Start, and free preschool.
I think didn't Trump just get rid of Head Start?
Yeah, I mean,
he's trying to get rid of Head Start.
If we invest in the children, right, in the families of the families, if we invest in the children and give them the best resources that we have to offer them, that will put them in good standing to start elementary school. And look, we all have stories of people who went to the worst school and ended up doing the best thing. And these exceptions are what we shouldn't do policy on, like the kids that are always going to do worse no matter what school they go to, and the kids that are going to be valedictorian no matter where they went. But everybody else in the middle is who we have to look at to make policy for. And I think if we can give families, children, infants, the support that they need in the beginning, it gives them the roots that the kids need to be able to, I'm going to make a tree metaphor here because that's an education metaphor, to grow into the adults.
To grow into the adults. But
thank you very much.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Of course, one of the theories about why people are leaving Cambridge, you know why they're leaving Cambridge?
Because Jim lives there.
No. No, because I guess they took some advanced math program away, and the people, or algebra at a certain age. I don't have the facts right, but it was some controversy about taking away advanced math. And
how much do you think you have paid in math tutoring per kid?
You know,
I can tell you how much I've paid in math tutoring per kid.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And I thought to myself, if you can't afford math tutoring and you can't understand the math because it's changed so much, your poor kid, they're screwed, right? And they're supposed to going to get help at the school, after school, before school, but the lines generally are too long, you can't get the help. Gretchen, by the way, I taught them grammar too. We didn't learn grammar. I couldn't believe we didn't learn grammar, at least not when my kids were in school. Gretchen from South Deerfield. Hi, Gretchen.
Hi there.
What do you think?
I just wanted to point out the decline in people going into education, and how as a public school teacher for 30 years, we used to have a plethora of student teachers coming into our school and competing to get those spots. And that's just not the case now. I'm not sure if everybody knows that within 5 years, a public school teacher who is certified needs to or is required to have a master's degree as well. So,
do you think they should? Do you think they need to do that, master's degree, Gretchen?
I think that's a good question.
Yeah, because it costs you a fortune there to get the master's, right?
It does, and that was put into law. I'm not sure how long ago.
Oh,
but
Gretchen.
There's certainly.
Gretchen, I got to apologize to you. We are out of time, so I have to cut you short. I apologize. I should have noticed that before you called in.
But those are good points,
next
Gretchen.
Time,
we'll talk about this again.
Okay.
All right. We thank you for your calls and texts. Coming up after this quick break, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley joins us here at the library to discuss the Democrats' strategy against Trump and his sycophants. We're going to talk about Epstein, the economy, gerrymandering. I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Jim Browdy. She's Margery Egan. She's playing Margery Egan today, and you are listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, misconception. The border-crossing Canadian drag queen has a spin on the MAGA acronym, Make America Gay Again. She joins us to talk about her new drag show, Lighting Up Provincetown. Plus, journalist and best-selling writer Hank Philippi Ryan on her latest thriller, where a budding writer's book tour turns treacherous. Tune in for that and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And PNC Bank, who believes when you pay attention to the details, amazing things can happen. Like when you check the pockets of a jacket you haven't worn since last fall and find $20. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. I'm Margery Egan, media maven. Sue O'Connell is in today for Jim Browdy. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We are very happy to be joined now live at the Boston Public Library by Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who represents the Massachusetts 7th Congressional District, including much of Boston and Cambridge.
And Cambridge.
That's right.
Cambridge.
Yeah.
Where I will be doing a coffee hour later today.
Oh, you
excellent.
will?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Are those fun, or are those just...
Well, they're more fun than the Republicans are going through right now, right?
Yeah. Well, listen, I love being in community and being with my constituents.
Yeah.
My Republican colleagues, I guess they have enough shame to recognize the wholesale harm they're doing, so they're running scared constantly and refusing to do coffee hours and town halls. In fact, I will be doing some town halls in Republican districts.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. So
yeah,
I'll come back and talk about that.
Okay. Well, let's first start off with, go ahead, Sue.
Yeah, let's talk about transit. We're going to be talking about transit later on with some transit experts. You have some ideas, you have some bills, you're caucusing with people. Talk about what your transportation for all idea is.
Well, first, let me just say, when I was elected to Congress almost 8 years ago now, I became the co-founder of one of our caucuses, is the Future of the Transportation Caucus. I founded it in partnership with Congressman Garcia from Chicago, Congressman Takano from California. We represent similar districts, vibrant, diverse, dynamic, and unequal, and really do believe that a lack of federal investment in public transportation, prioritizing equity, accessibility, and connectivity has contributed to a lot of our inequities and our disparities. And so transportation justice is really at the heart of our other goals: housing justice, economic justice, climate justice. And then recently, Senator Markey and I have reintroduced our legislation, the Freedom to Move Act. This is one of my favorite bill titles.
It is.
Because it is so literal, and it's a value, it's aspirational, but everyone should have the freedom to move. And we can do the work in partnership with our municipal colleagues in making our cities more livable. But what does that mean if people can't navigate them? Everyone deserves access to transportation that is accessible, affordable, rapid, and reliable. And again, my focus as a co-founder of the Future of Transportation Caucus is that when we talk about federal investment, that we're prioritizing equity, accessibility, connectivity, and sustainability. Public transportation, public transit is a public good, and we should invest in it that way. And so we want fair, free transit. All the data supports that it increases ridership. Again, it allows us to meet other goals. And yesterday, Senator Markey and I rode one of those fare-free buses from down in Dudley to Ruggles Station, and it was great to spend time with riders and to hear from them the difference that this had made for them. A number of our elders, one of the chief combatants of elder isolation is that people can age in community and remain connected to community. And the fact that having access to a fare-free bus line took away that burden. It gave that peace of mind that they can go see their grandchild at a school play, or go to the beauty salon, or go to their place of worship. And that's the thing about transportation. People need to be able to get to work, to get to childcare, to get to healthcare appointments, to get to school. And I would just say, as someone who grew up facing a fair amount of financial hardship, our car was repossessed a number of times, and I think people forget that for many, transportation is not an option. For many, it is their only choice. And we should eliminate those barriers. And again, it allows us to get to those broader goals of climate justice and economic justice.
And Congressman, we hear a lot about the T's financial woes, even with those movement forward on the free buses and stuff. So what's the financing look like for this? How could you do it?
Oh, I loathe that question.
Sorry.
Well, mostly because, what I believe, we don't suffer from a deficit of resource. We do suffer from a deficit of prioritization and empathy. And the return on investment is great. Public transit is a public good, and we should invest in it like it is.
Yeah. Ridership has gone up hugely on those bus lines, hasn't
Absolutely,
it, too?
yeah.
Didn't they find that? And I think that when they've had this free transportation elsewhere, that's around the country, that has proven to be true.
Absolutely. And I also want to just say, as an unapologetic progressive, which really just means to be a disruptor of an unjust status quo, it's ideas like fair free transit or student debt cancellation that people really did try to marginalize and say that this was pie in the sky sort of stuff. And then, in the midst of a pandemic, these things were being piloted. Kim Janey, when she was the mayor of the city of Boston, first piloted those fare-free lines. Mayor Wu, upon her election, continued to build upon that. But these pilots have been successful and proven all across our Commonwealth, from Merrimack Valley, from Lawrence, Somerville, Boston. So shout out to the MA7 doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is being a pace setter, leading for this Commonwealth and for this country. So, as Nelson Mandela said, it's always impossible until it is done. Our legislation, the Freedom to Move Act, builds on the success of fare free pilot programs in Boston and across the Commonwealth, making robust investments to provide safe, high quality, and fare free rides for all. I did get a question yesterday. Someone was, asking about, how does this improve service? If people, and I said, at the end of the day, we want to promote ridership, and we continue to push for those robust federal investments. from beyond just highways, roads and bridges when it comes to infrastructure. Transportation is infrastructure. We need those investments, and riders should never have to choose between safety and service.
Is anybody against this? I mean, because I talk to business leaders, you talk to business leaders, business owners, people who don't live in the city but live in the suburbs, that hire people who take, public transportation to work, who get upset when there's a problem with the MBTA because their workers are late or all those. Is there anyone who's saying this is a bad idea?
No one thinks it's a bad idea, just like they didn't think canceling student debt was necessarily a bad idea. It was just more, the question always is this feasible? Is this plausible? Can this actually happen? And again, we have pilots that are proven that have increased ridership, that have resulted in people, being gainfully employed. It's resulted in fewer congestion on our roads, reduction of greenhouse emissions. So again, the return on investment is high. I want to say on our buses as well, because I did take time to speak to a couple of the bus drivers, one who hadn't seen me for a little while and said, "Oh, you betrayed me. Now you're with another bus line. You don't ride my line anymore." And I said, I moved. But I was meeting people who've been driving buses for 20, 25, 16 years, and they love the role that they play in getting people where they need to go. It's bigger than just point A to point B. But again, people's ability to navigate the city, and they said fare free transit is safer because when people get on who don't have it, and they need to get to work, they need to get to school, they need to get to the grocery store, they need to pick up a prescription, whatever it is. The tension that creates for the bus driver who has built this community with people who get on this bus every day. And then sometimes that does then engage our law enforcement, and they don't want to have to do that. So if someone doesn't have it, why are we then going to criminalize poverty and deny someone the ability to get to where they need to go? And this is also more efficient because they can just board people by opening the back and the front door. So,
Congresswoman, we've heard a lot about Jeffrey Epstein for all summer long. It's continuing. I think Congress shut down to avoid talking about Jeffrey Epstein. That seems not to have worked. It's back, was the second week of September 12th or something like that one?
We're back the day after Labor Day.
The day after Labor Day, okay. So, you have called for a congressional hearing to allow the trafficking survivors of Jeffrey Epstein to speak to Congress. Tell us about that.
First, let me just say that unfortunately, my Republican colleagues have a long track record of the systemic protection of powerful men who have been predators. Whether you're talking about Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, Donald Trump himself, and we see that happening with Jeffrey Epstein. And I do believe that in all of this talk about the Epstein files, and again, in my role in the Committee on Oversight and Reform, under the leadership of our ranking member, Robert Garcia, and our subcommittee chair, Summer Lee, we forced a vote to get a subpoena to the DOJ to demand release of those files. That happened at a subcommittee hearing on the Committee on Oversight and Reform, which I serve, a hearing about child trafficking. And it was a very smart and effective strategy to call out their hypocrisy, to say, you don't care about the trafficking of children, because if you did, you would not have Mike Johnson right now saying, let's adjourn and recess the House rather than take a vote on release of these files. So we forced a vote for that subpoena. And then I have followed up with this request for a hearing centering the voices of survivors. In full transparency, I'm a survivor of a near decade of childhood sexual abuse myself, and also campus sexual assault. And I need to just say this: when you are a child and you have been groomed, you have been preyed upon, you have been exploited and violated in the most egregious of ways, it is a lifetime sentence. The residual trauma of that experience changes you on a cellular level fundamentally for the rest of your lives. And these survivors, in addition to a complete release of the Epstein files with their names redacted, and those survivors who see it as a part of their process for accountability and healing, if they want to come forward, then they should be given a platform to do that, so that we can understand in a comprehensive way who were the enablers of Jeffrey Epstein, and how far-reaching is this abuse corruption, and really cover up. I've been back and forth with legal counsel and some of the survivors, and how they characterize it as an institutional betrayal, because it has gone on for decades. And moreover, there were people like a Maria Farmer who were canaries in the coal mine, and because they were not believed and people did not act, they were complicit or negligent, there were more victims over these many decades. And perhaps that could have been avoided if Jeffrey Epstein and his enablers had been taken into account quickly. I won't get into Maria's story.
But she was one of the first ones.
But she was one of the first ones.
Okay.
And again, if we are going to do the work truly of accountability, of transparency, of truth, and support these survivors who are long overdue in getting the visibility, the platform, and the accountability they deserve, this should be happening in the Committee on Oversight and Reform. My mentor, may he rest in peace and power, the great Elijah Cummings, who was the chair of the Committee on Oversight and Reform when I was first appointed as a freshman, said that it is the role of oversight to be an efficient and effective pursuit of the truth. And that's what I intend to do.
Why do you think Donald Trump is not releasing these documents? Because he could, as everybody knows, except for the grand jury stuff, he could do this today.
Well, I mean, look, Donald Trump, what? He doesn't make good on anything that actually stands to benefit people or to advance progress in this country. So it's certainly not surprising. And as I said, Republicans have been complicit in the protection of powerful predators rather than centering survivors. So they want to shield predators. I want to center and fight for survivors, and that's the work that I'm going to do. And I should say, any step towards progress for accountability and healing for these survivors is a victory for all survivors. In the same way that we saw that, and I certainly felt that as a survivor myself, with the Catholic Church as an example.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's pivot a little bit here and talk about the Democrats. I think it's fair to say that anytime the party that didn't win the White House is not in the White House, there is a reassessing, there's an inventory, there's a what the heck are we doing? I have been watching local leaders like Mayor Wu, like Governor Healy across the country, attorneys general across the country being sort of the folks. I don't want to make it sound like other people aren't standing up, but the ones that we see right now leading the charge for the Democrats. How would you assess where the Democrats are right now? Are Democrats finding their footing? Is Gavin Newsom with his tweets, which I've now come to completely adore and think is the most brilliant thing on the face of the earth, where he's mirroring Donald Trump's tweets, and then people are criticizing his tweets, and he's showing the Donald Trump tweets. Is there a momentum building, or are we still, the Democrats still in an assessment mode? And I know you're still fighting. I'm not making it sound like you're all just having a conference somewhere.
Yeah, I think there's both and, that is occurring. But I'll just tell you the way I see it. One, when I look at the militarization happening in D.C. right now, and I hope we can talk more about that, but, it infuriates me because look how long we've been fighting for D.C. statehood, right? When I consider the impacts of this big, ugly bill, the draconian adverse impacts that this will have on our most vulnerable, I can't help but think how we would have been better inoculated from these harms if we had passed Build Back Better. Mm-hmm. You know why we didn't pass Build Back Better? To me, this is a season of call a thing a thing. We didn't pass Build Back Better because of Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema. So you want to know where Democrats are, I'll tell you where I'm at. Mm-hmm. Where I'm at right now is this is the season of call a thing a thing. And I'm not going to, the harm that's coming is blunt. I'm not going to be nuanced or couch things. Democrats have to stop operating with scared power. I can't go out here and do the work of rebuilding this party. I mean, my God, we lost the youth vote. And not because they voted Republican, they just stayed home. Democrats have always been the party of young people because we represent bold policy solutions and aspirational ideas. And so it worries me that I have colleagues that think that our response to having lost the White House and to be in this Republican majority trifecta is to moderate our aspirations. I disagree with that. I think the electorate has demonstrated that what they want is for us to advance policy solutions that are big and bold and go as deep as the hurt is. I can't rebuild this party to be one that is multiracial, intergenerational, and demand to have the gavel back. To do what? So as important as it is that we are doing the work of resistance against Donald Trump and this hostile administration and this hostile government takeover and this march towards extremism, we also have to be offering an affirmative Democratic case. Who are we? What do we want the gavel for? We had a trifecta. We had the House, the Senate, and the White House. Look at what's happening in Texas. We didn't restore voting rights. We didn't pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We didn't address, police brutality and criminal legal reform. I can't rebuild a party if I'm going to tell people the reason why we have not advanced progress is because of a Jim Crow filibuster. The American people do not want us to respond with, yes, we may be. Yes, we'll try. Barack Obama was successful because he said, yes, we can. Mm-hmm. So this is the moment for us to be affirming, what will we do? And so my response in this moment, again, is truth-telling, call a thing, conducting real-time oversight. Dr. King said organizing is our most powerful weapon, and we have to dramatize the evil. And so that's why I am going into Republican districts, doing these town halls in partnership with progressive partners and other congressional colleagues, because we have to make sure people understand who are the architects of this harm. And then we have to simultaneously be making the affirmative case for what Democrats will do. Things like fair, free transit. Mm-hmm. So when people say to me, well, why are you reintroducing legislation that you're not going to be able to move? I'm like, well, any person of conscience should care about these issues. These are not partisan issues. Healthcare, transportation, paid leave, universal child care, housing that is affordable. These are rural issues. These are, ending the scourge that is gun violence. My God, we have a mass shooting generation. Or school shooting. I mean, it's insane. So, that's what I'm focused on is the work of resistance, while also developing the affirmative vision and who are we and what will we do when we get the gavel back, and then making sure people understand who is responsible for this harm.
Congressman, we only have about a minute left, but you mentioned you want to speak more about what's going on with the National Guard in D.C. What do you want to say?
Yeah, again, if we had statehood, we would not be in a situation like this. But it is, it's racist and rogue. It is devastating to see the criminalization of the unhoused with both Supreme Court decisions, and what is happening here in D.C. And then a targeting of black men and black youth. In particular, which to me is very reminiscent of Boston after the Charles Stewart case, is very reminiscent of New York under Giuliani with stop and frisk. My godchildren who live in the city, they are young black boys, and they're afraid to go to their summer jobs. They're fearful of what it's going to be like their walk for school. And again, don't think that anything Donald Trump has done, whether it's his targeting of sanctuary cities or the militarization of D.C., this has nothing to do with public safety, has nothing to do with law and order. When you are disappearing people from the streets of Somerville, when you are targeting people in this way, it's terrorism. And that terror, that fear that you're stoking makes us all less safe.
That's Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Thank you very much for joining us, Massachusetts 7th Congressional District. We say goodbye to our listeners at any PM, but make sure to tune in to the fabulous 413 starting at 3 o'clock this afternoon. The show's going to continue right here in Boston. Coming up after the noon news, national security expert Juliette Kayyem joins us to talk about Trump's play to get rid of mail-in voting because Vladimir Putin said so ahead of the midterms. I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Jim Browdy. She's Margery Egan, and you are listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM live from the BPL and streaming at the youtube.com/GBH News.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Braude and Margery Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the MBTA commuter rail, helping riders skip the stress of city traffic and parking. Just take the train. You can plan your trip at mbta.com/massbytrain. When photographer Pete Walsh stumbles across a bizarre creature in an Australian urban waterway, he forms an unlikely bond and embarks on a mission to save the platypus. Watch Nature, The Platypus Garden, tonight at 8 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Margery Egan, ahead in hour number 2 of BPR, live from the Boston Public Library as President Trump escalates the federal takeover of Washington, D.C. We'll talk with national security expert Harvard's Juliette Kayyem about that and what to expect and how to prepare as Hurricane Erin barrels toward the East Coast.
I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Jim Braude. Then it's our monthly transit panel with Chris Dempsey and Jim Aloisi. We're going to get their take on what Boston needs to do to clean up the transit mess that is Cleveland Circle. Plus, Chris and Jim's reaction to a major transit bill signed by Governor Healy earlier this month. All that and our award-worthy bite-sized segment, Two More Things. Next on Hour 2 of BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The governors of 6 states are sending their own National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. They say they're supporting President Trump's initiative to tackle crime. But as NPR's Meg Anderson tells us, several of those states have crime problems of their own.
The governors in West Virginia, South Carolina, Mississippi, Louisiana, Ohio, and Tennessee have all pledged to send their own National Guard troops to D.C. for the Trump administration's crime campaign. But violent crime in the district is falling, and last year, cities in at least 4 of those states had higher murder rates than Washington's. In Mississippi, Jackson's murder rate was nearly 4 times the rate in D.C., and in Memphis, Tennessee, the murder rate was nearly triple. Insha Rahman of the Vera Institute of Justice says that signals to her,
this is about a political power grab and political theater, not about making cities safer.
NPR reached out to the governors in Mississippi and Tennessee, but did not receive a response. Meg Anderson, NPR News.
Texas legislature Republicans are getting ready to approve a redrawn state congressional map that favors their party next year's midterms after weeks of delays due to their Democratic colleagues leaving the state to deny a quorum. Now Democrats are back and under police escort. GOP leadership want to ensure it finally meets quorum to vote on a new map at President Trump's insistence. The Democrats, who accuse the GOP of making an unlawful power grab to keep control of the U.S. House, recently returned to Texas after California said it was taking steps to add Democratic-friendly seats to its map. The Israeli military says it is calling up an additional 50,000 reservists for a major operation against Hamas in Gaza City. Here's NPR's Jackie Northam.
The decision to call up additional reservists came after Israeli military leaders gave preliminary approval to the next phase of the war in Gaza. The increase will almost double the number of active reservists in the nearly 2-year-old war. An Israeli military official, speaking on condition of anonymity, says many of the reservists will free up active duty troops currently deployed in other areas so they can fight in the densely populated Gaza City, in areas heavily controlled by Hamas. Israeli troops are already laying the groundwork for a broader upcoming operation. Jackie Northam, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Target reported another drop in sales for its most recent quarter and also named a replacement for its outgoing CEO. Here's NPR's Scott Horsley.
Target stock has a bullseye on its back after the retail bellwether said sales at existing stores fell nearly 2% in the most recent quarter. That's not quite as bad as forecasters had expected, but Target continues to struggle. Retail rival Walmart is set to report earnings tomorrow. Target's chief executive, Brian Cornell, will step down from that role in February, but stay on as board chairman. He'll be replaced as CEO by Target's chief operating officer, who's been with the chain for 2 decades.
It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton is leading a group of House Democrats and veterans who are calling on Israel to allow more food and other aid to enter Gaza. The Eagle Tribune reports that the request comes amid increasing warnings of a humanitarian disaster in that region. In a letter to the Israeli ambassador to the U.S., the lawmakers expressed serious concern with the lack of humanitarian aid in Gaza. They say the aid would also help Israel deprive Hamas of any leverage that it has gained in the region. Stop and Shop wants you to do just that. Stop into one of their stores and start shopping. And to entice you into their Eastern Mass stores, the Quincy-based grocery store chain is lowering prices on some 3,000 items. Price cuts will be between 5 and 40% and includes everything from Stop and Shop Italian bread to Chobani non-fat yogurt, Ken's salad dressing, Sargento cheese, and lots of other items. Why the price cuts? Well, because company officials say one goal is to offset some of the pain that shoppers have felt in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. The company is also trying to rebound after it closed more than 30 stores in 2024. In sports, the Red Sox off today. They open a series with the Yankees in the Bronx tomorrow night. In the forecast, high surf advisory still in effect until 8 a.m. on Saturday for most of the Massachusetts coastline, especially the South Coast and the islands. We are getting some much-needed rain today with temperatures staying cool, high only in the mid-60s. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Subaru, who, along with its retailers, is partnering with adoptaclassroom.org to provide funding to high-needs schools and local communities for the Subaru Loves Learning initiative. Subaru, more than a car company.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. I am Margery Egan. She is media maven Sue O'Connell. She's in for Jim Browdy, who'll be back next week. He's on vacationing. He's on vacation.
He's on vacation. He's summering. You know what? Let's say he's summering.
That's right.
Because he loves that verb. Summering.
Okay. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. A couple of programming notes. The mayor of Boston will be with us August 26th. She'll be here at the library from 12 to 1. And her opponent in the mayoral race, Josh Kraft, will be here August 27th at noontime. But we're joined right now on Zoom by national security expert Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard, Kennedy School of Government, and CNN senior national security analyst. Hey, Juliette, thank you so much for Zooming in.
So glad to Zoom in and not drive in to Boston, but I will be there Friday.
Yep, the two of us will be together.
Right.
This will be. Have we co-hosted before, Juliette? I don't think we have.
We have not.
See?
And everyone needs to watch it out.
I know. It's
Absolutely,
gonna be good.
That's right. Juliette and Sue will be here on Friday at the Boston Public Library because I'm taking a day off too.
Another vacation. My gosh.
I know.
Summering.
That's right.
It's August.
I'm definitely summering here.
I see.
Good.
I like it. All right. So we have a hurricane coming, Erin.
And I'm going surfing. I'm going surfing this afternoon.
Okay.
Oh, what about the riptide that we keep hearing about?
The surf beach is okay, and there's plenty of people there, and the waves are good. They're not quite dangerous yet. I probably won't go tomorrow, but I know that's not why we're talking about the hurricane, but the hurricane has finally brought waves to New England. It's been a grim summer for the surfers here.
How are we feeling about our federal government's ability to respond and predict and warn? I mean, listen, I grew up, my mother would have been a prepper if she had been born 20 years later. She lived through some major hurricanes in New England in the 40s and was always very careful and always said it's better to plan and prepare and have it not happen than to be caught. But I got to tell you, I don't feel really great about the federal government having my best interests of safety in mind during Erin. How about you?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, this is the kind of thing where we're not going to know until it's too late. So, I mean, obviously the numbers. FEMA's 20% down. The dissolution of satellite the lack of preparation in terms of alert and warning systems through the National Weather Service, all of those will take their toll. We just won't know it until it's absolutely necessary. We don't know what this hurricane is going to bring us. And look, there's still state and local capacity, and states and localities do take this seriously. I think where we will feel it is in recovery. That is where Donald Trump has really pushed to have more. He says a lot of things to have more state and local responsibility in that, but it's just not at all clear what that looks like. It's just a statement that he's made. He's backtracked on his desire to get rid of FEMA. I think that's coming from pressure from Republican governors who say that, look, the states simply don't have this capacity to do that. And the second thing is, obviously, we're in a blue state. And I think the numbers are starting to show that Trump's inclination to assist a state is tied to their color, so to speak, and has gone after California, obviously, would likely, I think, would likely tie support from Massachusetts to Mayor Wu and immigration stuff. They're just tying, a lot of this stuff to they're tying disaster relief to other efforts that are unrelated to disaster relief. So we'll see what's in store.
Can I just add one thing too, Juliette, which I know that you've talked about, but what folks need to know when they're, not necessarily here in Boston or in the major cities, but a lot of some of the smaller TV and radio stations rely on the National Weather Service for their meteorological reports. A lot of them aren't doing it themselves. So in Boston, that's one thing. We've got, great meteorologists here with all sorts of data. But when we weaken the National Weather Service, we're weakening the ability for local meteorologists, and especially in rural areas, to be able to communicate what's going to happen effectively.
But let's just be clear about this, though. We're expecting high waves, rip tides. We're not expecting any big thing from
there
might
be isolated damage based on the water level rise and stuff, but nothing. We're not under. We're not even under a hurricane watch yet, let alone a warning. So you're just going to experience it in terms of, the rain and stuff like this right now. But so you're exactly right. One of the funny things, or stupid things that I saw on X or Twitter is, people would be like, we don't need the National Weather Service. My app works perfectly. You're like, you realize your app tied to the National Weather Service. It's not.
Juliette, you know what I think would be a great reality show? You and I together reading X out loud, because I also had a bit of a brain explosion when people said to me, well, we don't need the local news and we don't need public, television and radio in rural areas because I have my cell phone. And if a disaster strikes, I'll use my cell phone. I'm like, okay, your cell phone is going to go down, and you're going to be standing there without your crank-up radio that you get if you donate to NPR.
E-Time crank radio. That's right.
Bringing it all together.
No, that's save us all. Okay.
That's exactly right. No, it's like my app. Instead of viewing the app as like if they view it as like some standalone entity that just exists in space, like it's without government support. But yes. So anyway. Yes, and I promise, because you're going to get texts and emails, I promise people I'm very safe when I go out into the water and I'm following the advisories. And I will probably not go in tomorrow for that reason.
We're talking to Juliette Kayyem, CNN's Chief National Security Analyst, and a bunch of other things. So we were talking very, very briefly about what's going on in D.C. with the Trump administration's takeover of the city, sending the National Guard. There are other states that are sending the National Guard there. From a security perspective, which is your area of expertise, what does this mean for D.C.?
Yeah, it's a sort of a pile-on towards D.C. So obviously, I'm not saying anything people haven't read. D.C.'s crime rate is significantly lower than it had been. This is based on a single event that happened to a member of Doge with the unfortunate name of Big Balls, or a nickname of Big Balls. They claim that he got accosted. As you know, I trust nothing that this administration says. I'm sure he did get accosted, but whatever. The narrative they always find something that fits their narrative, and I think it's incumbent on reporters and analysts to always question the thing that they found. So there's two things going on. One is the deployment of federal law enforcement to work with the DC police. They tried to take over the DC police. A court pushed back on them regarding that. And that is just a management challenge in terms of what are the authorities of the FBI or ICE or Homeland Security if they see a mugging. Because a mugging is not a federal crime, or if they see something. So what you're basically seeing is just walk-arounds. The guys look pretty bored, but it is a show of strength, so to speak, or Trump strength. And you're starting to see the economy, restaurant reservations, and other things buckle under that. People just don't want to go out in D.C. The second is, of course, the deployment of the National Guard. Once again, it's patrol presence. We don't know what their mandate is. We don't know what the mission is. They're just sort of standing there, and then all the Republican governors bend over backwards to send some of their members, a couple hundred here, a couple hundred there, from Alabama or whatever. These guys is just such a waste of time. But it is acclimating us to what Trump clearly wants to do, which is make crime a federal priority without not working with localities, but going to war with them, so that people will then begin to view the National Guard as like a police entity, which is not the way it should. It's not the way they're trained. It's not the way it should work. The party that used to be very into states' rights seems not so interested in states' rights anymore. But also, it doesn't work. I mean, we know from data that shows of force do not decrease crime. It's community engagement. It's outreach to communities that are experiencing crime, making law enforcement more accessible to communities. That is what works. The data is absolutely clear that there is no benefit from a safety and security perspective for any of this. So it's a lead up to something potentially more nefarious.
So Juliette, I have lived in the city of Boston 2 times for 10 years each. And the first time I lived in Mission Hill right after in the 90s in Roxbury, when it was a higher crime area. I live in Fort Hill now in Roxbury. I obviously work with the South End News and cover a lot of issues in the South End neighborhood. And over the years, I've heard a number of people, citizens, residents say, when crime has been bad or there's been an issue, maybe we could get the National Guard to come in and just give us a show of force, which they understand what it is, but just show us some support to calm the neighborhood down or address an issue. What would happen if urban neighborhoods all across the country put in requests to Trump to send the National Guard in and said, here's the specific neighborhood that we would like help with?
I mean, you raise a great point, because the Post did a story on where the National Guard is deployed. It's not in the high crime areas. It's just
it's in
just
tourist
like
places. Yeah, look at the Lincoln Memorial. Oh my gosh.
Union Station. Well, Sue, I'm not opposed to the support of the National Guard to support local and state efforts, but that would be under the purview of the governor. Mm-hmm. And what Trump has done, because of the unique status of DC, is these troops coming in from other states are actually under the federal side of the National Guard,
so he
which is
federalizes
not integrated with DC.
Right.
So, look, I think the National Guard, I think communities that are experiencing high crime need to understand why that is happening, and then if the National Guard is a solution, to feel comfortable having governors deploy it. But I think Baltimore is a good counter. Baltimore's crime has gone significantly down. That took things like summer programming for kids, right? Yeah. So youth crime went down in huge magnitudes because of basketball programs, because of security at outdoor parks in the evening, so that the kids would feel comfortable playing basketball until midnight. Anyone with teenage kids knows, they're going out after dinner. They're not going out before dinner. They have dinner with you, and then they're like, okay, see you later. So it was a mayor that recognized what the what the needs were, and then aligned public safety with the needs of the community. And that's when crime plummeted. That's not what Trump's doing. And let's not even, Republicans are so disingenuous. Let's not even pretend that it is. This is a lead up to 2026.
Juliette Kayyem, I want to talk to you about mail-in voting, because Trump, he wants to stop states from voting by mail and also using voting machines. He made some comments about voting machines, which are not true, that they're not working and they're not functioning. But here's him on the Sean Hannity show on Fox last night, talking about Vladimir Putin telling him, Trump, that Trump would have won in 2020 if not for rigged mail-in ballots. Here it is.
Vladimir Putin said something, one of the most interesting things. He said, your election was rigged because you have mail-in voting. He said mail-in voting every election. He said no country has mail-in voting. It's impossible to have mail-in voting and have honest elections.
Juliette, I'm a little embarrassed for you that you haven't asked Vladimir Putin for advice on how to run
democratic elections.
What is wrong with you? Why have you not reached out to Russia for information on this?
Yeah, this is part of the voter suppression effort by Donald Trump, because he sees the same polling we do, which is the party is wildly unpopular. This combined with efforts, the redistricting in Texas is, we're going to change the rules because we can't win, or we're worried we won't win under the present rules. So first of all, a couple dozen countries do mail-in voting.
Yeah, fact checking there.
It's totally normal, and I don't even understand what he means by voting machines. Like, are we going to really do hand counts at this stage? The thing with Donald Trump, first of all, as everyone knows, the Constitution prohibits the federal government from controlling the voting decisions by states. He can put pressure on them, but he certainly can't tell them they can or can't do certain things. Each state has a different priorities in terms of how they're going to allow voting for federal elections to occur. He throws these things out there, as bait, as a way to focus, or a way to distract from other things, or lack of other things that are going on. And we have to take it seriously. That this, I don't know how we don't take it seriously. The plan for 2026 is suppression of the vote. And if Democrats win, potentially an assertion of power, or the threat of power through the military or law enforcement to negate the benefits of it. I say that not because I'm paranoid. I just say, I don't know what other proof we need. The man is clearly
he's building a ballroom. He's planning. It's not going to be.
They've already paved over the Rose Garden. Did you see
I
that?
know, but he's building. You don't put on an addition of that side to your house unless you're selling it or you're planning on staying there for a while. So
and I think I don't. The Republican, the Republican electeds recognize this through line. And so one has to believe two things. One is they agree with it, right? That the way our democracy is set up is not suitable for them. I get a thumbs up to myself. The other is something that just drives me crazy is so does the voter. In other words, we're constantly blaming Trump for things that people know he's doing. And we can blame Democrats all the time for not having the right messaging, or they should have focused on money or immigration or the border. But it's not like it's a surprise to the American voter that this is his plan. And how we convince them otherwise, I don't have an answer. But the voter also has to take responsibility for where they want this country to go. This is you can't have a successful challenge to democracy without some popular support. And Trump doesn't have a lot of it. He's not very popular, but he certainly has enough.
One thing I don't understand about this, so you hear a lot of Republicans themselves from rural states talking about how in rural states mail-in voting has become very important because they are rural states and you got a little bit of a truck to get to the voting place. So, I mean, I guess if we're going to lie and cheat about the election, it doesn't matter, but it does seem as though he got he got tons of mail-in voters last time around, right? So I
don't know the breakdown offhand, but just even think of the military.
Yeah,
right.
Not exactly your liberal constituency.
And the elderly and the senior citizens.
And the elderly, right.
So there's a bunch of them. So Juliette Kayyem, we have a saying around our house that whenever my daughter asks to do something that I'm concerned might be dangerous, I say, "Let me see what Juliette Kayyem says."
Okay, what is that? What does she want? What does she want to do?
So I have concerns about traveling internationally. Now.
Oh, come on, Sue.
Okay, well, I hope she's not listening. So, so for folks,
if she's like my child, she is not.
No,
she definitely is not. I asked one of my kids. I was like, I'm guest co-hosting with Sue on Friday. Do you want to come down to the library? And he goes, "What time?" And I go, 11 to 2. He goes, "That might be too early."
Yeah, too early. I'll watch on the Zoom. But do you have any advice for folks like people who are here, who are immigrants but have been naturalized? Our citizens, people who are here on green cards that have been living here a long time, people who, may be on Trump's radar for one reason or another. I'm sure people are asking you, what's your general fall travel advice for leaving the country, and coming back in and getting back to your home?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is one of those things where I say, what is your risk tolerance, not what's mine? Here's my advice. There are instances, because everything relies on that CBP person, there are instances, you can't deny it, in which access back into the United States is being denied. Those instances, or someone's being detained. There are also instances in which U.S. citizens and people lawfully here are being detained for some period of time. I can't deny them. But for the most part, lots and lots of people are going back and forth on various immigration statuses that are fine. And so, part of it is just sort of your, why are you going and do you have concerns coming back? So if it's for, so I guess I will admit, I say if the statuses are valid, go.
Yeah, you do hear a lot of the hesitation, though, from people that
I do. And that's where I say, like, for example, like my students, they're on temporary visas.
Right.
So I say to them, what's your risk tolerance for not finishing graduation? So this is a good example, like during spring break last year, when you were hearing lots of things and there was a ban on, we weren't quite sure the status of everything. I told students, look, if it's important for you to walk with your class for graduation, don't go, just stick around, finish the semester. It's only 4 more classes, and stick around during that interim period. And that's your safest bet, right? If it's important. If it's not important, or you need to get back or see family, whatever, then that's your risk calculation. I will say one of the ironies, once again, these things that Donald Trump thinks hurt the people he hates, like Harvard or the big schools. I just saw today that the attacks on foreign students are actually hurting places like the University of Iowa.
Oh, really?
Indiana.
Yeah.
Well, because
there are a lot of foreign students.
I just know anecdotally, I'm not teaching hybrid, and I'm not teaching. At one stage we had a scenario that would have us go to Canada to teach foreign students that would go there. I'm teaching in person in Cambridge. That tells me, I don't know the numbers, that tells me that Harvard is seeing students willing to take the risk. They could still get stopped at the border because they want that education. Where they're not seeing it is at schools that may find it harder to attract international students who might be willing to go to France or go to Canada or go to some other other countries.
Yeah,
so,
we never think about the University of Iowa or those schools as having international students.
Oh, they're huge.
There's a huge number of
They're
them.
huge. I mean, if you look at the UT system, if you look at Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, they're absolutely huge, and they are great programs for international students, and it benefits the in-state students as well. And so that's yet another thing where the consequences of this are going to be felt by the people supporting it. As, for example, if your student body is down by a significant amount, that's fewer people spending money in the town that surrounds.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Juliette, we'll
Juliette.
see you on Friday, you and me
Friday
here,
for the
baby.
party.
That's right.
We're going to get a theme song, I think.
Thanks,
new theme song.
Juliette.
All right,
Bye,
Juliette
you guys.
Kayyem,
See you soon.
former
Bye.
Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, the faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and CNN senior national security analyst. After this quick break, Jim Aloisi and Chris Dempsey, they've biked in to join us for a transportation panel. They've also walked. Democrats' renewed push for a fare, free public transit and what our priorities should be for reliable transit during the Trump administration. I am Sue O'Connell in for Jim Browdy. She is Margery Egan, and you are listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
One of Europe's largest mass graves is being unearthed in Ireland. The victims are children who died in a home for unwed mothers.
It's blatantly obvious. They had no regard for those children because they're illegitimate.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly. How the grave tells a story of the Catholic Church in Ireland on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, presenting Van Gogh, the Roulin Family Portraits, featuring Van Gogh's portraits of the Roulin family and the deep bonds of friendship behind them. On view through September 7th. More at mfa.org. And Comcast, offering Xfinity with internet and mobile plans to help stay connected at home and on the go. Restrictions apply. Xfinity Internet requires Xfinity Mobile. Actual speeds vary.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I am Margery Egan. Our media maven Sue O'Connell from NBC 10 Boston is here for Jim Browdy, who'll be back next week. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Two quick programming notes. The mayor of Boston is going to be with us from 12 to 1 on August 26th, and her opponent in the mayoral race, Josh Kraft, will be with us the next day at noontime. Both of them will also be here at the Boston Public Library. But right now we're joined at the library desk by two of our transit experts, Jim Aloisi, former Transportation Secretary for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and Chris Dempsey, who served as Assistant Transportation Secretary, both under Deval Patrick, the former governor. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming in.
Thank you. Do you know the last time that Chris and I were together?
A long time ago, right?
I think May of 2021.
Wow.
Was it?
Did you write that down, Chris, in your book as an important anniversary date?
Yeah. Well, you had to take a step off because you were running for office, so you couldn't be on.
Right.
But now you're back.
He was biking for office.
He was biking.
Sure. So.
Now we're back.
I think back then we were the transit nerds.
We were.
We've been upgraded to the transit experts.
That's right.
You can't get to expert.
We're older now. We're not nerds.
Yeah, that's right. You're not nerds anymore. Okay.
All right, so, if you had asked me 10 years ago what one of the driving local issues in a mayoral race would be, I don't think that I would say bike lanes.
Is that a pun?
That's
driving issue?
Yes,
Pun?
as Menino said, the car is no longer king.
That's right.
But we're still battling it out. And I also, I always like to kind of give a little set the table moment that some of the things we take for granted in life actually had to be birthed. They have to go through things and see how they're working and how they're not working. And so we're sort of really at the beginning birthing of bike lanes around Massachusetts and Boston. But Chris, I want to start with you because I see you most often on a bicycle of anyone I know.
And I biked here today.
And stopping at red lights, which I also want to. I watched him. I watched him while I was having lunch one day, stopping at red lights.
stop. That's very
Yes, I did.
impressive. That may put you back in the nerd category. I'm not sure.
Yes, and getting groceries and carrying them home on his bike. So what's the status, do you think, of how the bike lane is playing in the discussion? I don't want to ask you to take a side here for the mayoral, but it's always a push-pull. What do you think the status of the bike lane conversation is as we enter into the mayoral election?
Well, streets are always a source of conflict in terms of how we use the space. The former New York City Transportation Commissioner, Jeanette Sadiq-Khan, titled her book Street Fight because of the sort of hand-to-hand combat that sometimes occurs in public meetings around what we should have on a street, parking versus bike lanes versus travel lanes. I think this is an important election because we have made it an issue, or the candidates have made it an issue. I don't think anybody should be surprised that Mayor Wu has advanced many bike lanes throughout the city. She ran in part on doing that. More recently, she's sort of toned some of that back a little bit, and I think shown that she's not ideological about it, but still pushing forward. And I think Josh Kraft is seeing that this has been a source of tension in some neighborhoods, and that there are some voters out there, I happen to think they're a minority, but some voters out there that would like to see that progress rolled back, that would like to see more space allocated for driving, and he's trying to win their votes as part of this campaign.
What do you think, Jim?
Well, so I'm a transit user. I don't ride a bike for my own safety because I haven't done that in a long time. But I support the introduction of safe, protected cycling lanes throughout the city and throughout most of the metropolitan cities. The streetscape is a finite, publicly funded space. It doesn't grow. So, you have children. You teach your children how to share when they have finite goods, whether it's toys or whatever. We all have to share this finite space called the street. And for too long, I think we just assume, that the streetscape should be relegated exclusively to automobility, whether it's parking or driving. And the answer in a dense urban environment is no, right? We have to give some rights to folks who want to bike safely, to folks who want to have a bus that runs better and want a dedicated bus lane, to pedestrians who want to walk safely. And so I'm very much, look, we're in the beginning, the second quarter of the 21st century. We have to think differently about urban mobility and urban access. And more people want to bike, but they want to bike safely. I think it's a foolhardy issue, frankly, to run a mayoral campaign on, but good luck with that. I just think we have to begin to get people used to the idea that public spaces should be shared fairly, and when they're shared fairly, they should be built safely. And I don't see anything controversial about either of those propositions.
So let's do a big picture look at the MBTA. We had a story in the Globe today about how the Orange Line is going up to 55 miles an hour, and Phil Eng, the guy that runs the team now, is very excited about that. Then we had that mess up on the Blue Line, where I guess a steel cable caused this mess on the Blue Line. You saw everybody walking around the tunnels there. But overall, what do you think? Are we? It seems like we're making progress, but I don't know.
I think we're definitely making progress, and I think the general manager gets a lot of credit for that, not just him, but the team that he's put together. And I also think that the Healy-Driscoll administration gets some credit for supporting the general manager. Every time that I interact with them, I'm hearing about the faith that they have in General Manager Eng and the resources they're allocating.
It's like a phenomenon. We call him the Ted Lasso of the MBTA.
So, people on Twitter call him Train Daddy.
Train Daddy. I like that.
And so, the T's issues are more complicated than what just one person can solve, but he's really a leader and a symbol of the turnaround that I think is happening. But of course, with much, much more work to do. You talked about the Blue Line, Jim's favorite line as a East Boston
My favorite line
native.
is a Revere. And we never had a problem growing up. I don't ever recall a problem with the Blue Line.
Yeah. So for years when we were in government, the Blue Line was sort of the new shiny line that was working pretty well. But those improvements are now, 20 or 30 years old at this point, and so they're starting to get a little creaky, and not everything's working perfectly over there. But in general, I think the trend is in the right direction. I think one of the headwinds here is that we still haven't seen the return to downtown life and downtown office work that we had pre-COVID. And it will be important for the T to continue to show that it's a reliable system as a way to help invite and encourage people back downtown.
I think the tea's better than it's been in a while. There's a lot to do. You know, I'm not one of these folks who engages in adulation of individuals. I think that's just the wrong thing to do and a mistake, right? But I think a lot of things I think about the tea, right? I think that we need to focus a lot more on getting ridership back. I'm not particularly in favor of week-long shutdowns of subway systems at this point. I think we've got to move away from that into a different way of doing this.
What would be a different way of doing it?
Well, I think you shut it down like 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, and you have more overnight work, right?
Which is the way it was historically done, really, up until the Baker administration decided to do the longer shutdowns.
So I just think these long shutdowns end up suppressing ridership, and they harm people who just need to get better access to places. So I'm not for that. I am for steady progress. There are things that the T could do a better job at. Frequencies are spotty sometimes. Issues like red line train cars seem to me way out of everyone's control at this point, in terms of stuff being confiscated in ports and whether the new cars can come in on time or not.
Yes, those are fabricated in China.
Yeah.
And so they're being held up by the Trump administration at the Philadelphia port and just slowed down without really any good reason.
Wait a minute. Why would he hold up the red line cars at the Philadelphia?
There was some question about whether, when they were made in China, were they made in a place or in an environment where there was some sort of human rights issues at play. So.
Okay, this is not about tariffs then?
No, this was less about tariffs and more about a claimed human rights violation issue.
Okay, so if there's a human rights violation issue, what does that mean then? You send
That's a good question.
trains back?
What I heard the T say is that they were confident it would be resolved, so we'll see. We'll find out. I mean, in retrospect, putting all our eggs in that basket for these cars doesn't look so great, but it's easy to say everything in retrospect. In the moment it seemed like a nice idea, and today it doesn't seem so much.
You mentioned you're not into adulation of one person, even though we call him Ted Lasso of the T. But one of the things, and maybe because as I was a reporter for so long, I view the T as a very secretive operation. You can never find out what was going on over there. And then you have these stories where you have some crazy thing like the cash room, wherever the cash room was, people running around, cooking cheeseburgers in their flip-flops and shorts and cash disappearing. They were you couldn't even find out about their pension. So I guess as a person in Massachusetts, taxpayer in Massachusetts, I don't know if it's just Phil Eng, it's maybe his team, whatever, but I feel much better about the MBTA than I ever have, because I don't think it's sneaky like it was.
They're certainly better at public relations than they've been, that's for sure. But the problem with this adulation, right, there's going to be a next person after Phil Eng, and that person could be a really good person, but then they're always going to be, how does that person match up against? And it's very unfair, right?
Yeah.
And I think this happened in New York with Andy Byfield, like another train daddy, and then no one else can match up to him. I think it does a disservice institutionally to the system that has to have a succession of good people, not just one good person.
Yeah.
So we should respect and admire someone who does their job well, but I think there are just limits to that, and I'm just not one to think that that's the way to deal with.
I guess accountability. I feel like there's accountability now.
Well, he says what he's going to do, and then he does it, which is somewhat to the public relations aspect of it, because he's only saying what he knows he's going to do, that he knows he's going to deliver. But I think there's also, from a media standpoint, Margery, from a press standpoint, there's a reliability of being able to report what he's doing because he's telling you what he's going to do, right? And so by this period, you can judge me. Have I done this? And if he hasn't done it, then he gives you a plan for what he's going to do. And that's a communication style that I think would be great if more people would adopt, more public servants.
Certainly in the past, that role has been home to political appointees who have been maybe more focused on managing the politics and public relations for the administration or others in government, and a little less on the details. And I think the current general manager, Phil Eng, is more focused on the details, which, by the way, happens to lead to much better politics, because when the system is working better, it solves some of the political problems.
Okay. We never really found out what happened with those tracks that were not wide enough, and who was responsible.
Yeah,
who
on the
took
Green Line
accountability.
extension.
Yeah, that kind of thing, I think, bothers people a lot.
As it should.
As it should. But you're very upset about Cleveland Circle.
I am. My entire
Why don't you
life.
tell people about your
entire
concerns?
life, since I was born in 1961, Cleveland Circle and Brookline has been a challenge. I missed the ground round. I missed the movie theater. I have visited friends there when I was in college, always taking my life in my hands. I played softball in that field that's right adjacent to there. And it's one of those places that whenever I see construction happening, I'm like, oh, good, they're going to fix it. And as the Boston Globe is reporting with Alan Wisbicki, is Cleveland Circle the worst intersection in Boston? Of course, it's not. It's kind of in Boston. Is it Boston or Brookline?
It's on the border. Brighton is on the border of Brighton.
That's part of the problem.
That's part of the problem. So is it the worst, and am I just stuck on this?
No, if she asked, I would take her to Charles Circle. We could see. Have you been there recently?
Yes, I have. Yes.
That's a good one.
I think that
I
qualifies.
also grew up with Bell Circle. Remember Bell Circle,
Yes,
which still
right.
exists, and that was if you could get through that the first time your parents let you take the car, you would live. Otherwise, they got the car back because you were dead.
Perhaps it's something about circles
Yes.
we've settled on this. I think that these are challenging sort of spatial environments in cities, right? There's a lot going on in Cleveland Circle. There's a hell of a lot, going on in Charles Circle. And again, I think we have to, this is a good example, going back to the bike discussion, this finite space, and it's accommodating a lot. The T, people who want to bike, people who want to drive, people who want to park.
College students.
And it's very challenging for a city. That's why I really object to people taking the mayor on this issue. It's like, really? How easy do you think it is to manage that finite space in an urban environment where you have multiple stakeholders who have the view that they should have a priority over the next person, rather than work together collaboratively, right? Everyone has the view, no, this is mine and I'm entitled to it. It's hard to get people out of that mindset, frankly. That's a behavioral thing that someone else is going to have to deal with. But I do think we need to figure out how to engage people in a conversation about best practice and deploy that in ways where people can gradually get accustomed to new ways of thinking about urban space.
Well, let's talk about what's wrong with it. What's wrong with Cleveland Circle? You live near there.
Yeah, so a lot of this actually comes down less to
By
infrastructure.
the way, it's at the end of the C line,
yep.
right? And there's no circle there either. There
used to be. You can still see it.
Okay.
So I've got
the circle's gone.
It's on the ground.
Okay.
Sort of 2 points here. The first is that one of the reasons we have not seen much progress here is that there are 3 different entities, all of which who have a veto over progress. So one is the city of Boston, but also the MBTA, which runs trolleys on the streetcars on the surface there. And the third is the town of Brookline. So, Margery, you and I as Brookline taxpayers are not immune to criticism and fault for Cleveland Circle's current state. But any one of those 3 can say, this new design doesn't work for us and we're just not going to allow it to move forward. It's hard enough when there's 1 veto or 2 vetoes, but 3 potential vetoes makes it really, really hard to design a solution when you've got multiple roads from different cities and towns and multiple train tracks. And this is not just a place where the train is running through, it's the end of the C line, as you pointed out. So there are many different configurations of tracks to get to the maintenance center, to get to actually up the road. You can get up the road to the B line. There's a connection between the B line and the C line there. They all come together in one place. Here's the second point I want to make. That layout, when it used to have a circle and was called the Circle, was actually done by Frederick Law Olmsted and his firm. So,
I didn't know that.
So all of Beacon Street in the 1880s was sort of improved and upgraded from a country lane into the really grand boulevard that we have today. He had a really nice design, and the problem was that he was designing sort of right at the end of the horse and cart era and the dawn of the car
bike lane. Oh no, car.
The bike lane era. Actually, bikes came first before cars is an important point. But that design of the sort of elegant circle he had just didn't survive the era of the automobile because there was just too much conflict going on. So it got sort of redesigned, but probably ultimately in a worse way because there wasn't an ability to control all the vehicles. I want to add one glimmer of hope, a little less on the circle, but on everything towards Boston from the circle. When Olmsted laid out Beacon Street, again, the horse and cart era, he had a lane for carts, he had a lane for the trolley system and carts on the other side, and he also had something called the bridle path, which was literally for people riding horses on horseback.
Oh my God.
In the 1880s, right? Country gentlemen and women riding horseback. In the 1930s, as horses sort of gone away and the demand for parking increased, we converted all of that space into these very long parking spaces. They're like 25 or 30 feet long in some places. And there is now a proposal that is moving forward through a process that is going to actually restore a path in the middle of Beacon Street, right along the streetcar path, and preserve much of the parking, because all you have to do is sort of shorten the parking spaces. So in hopefully 3, 4, 5, maybe 7 or 8 years, you'll be able to ride a bicycle or jog
Or
right
horse.
down the middle, or bring
Or
a horse
horse.
back, right down the middle of Beacon Street, all the way from Cleveland Circle to St. Mary's Circle. in Brooklyn.
Wow, that's kind of cool.
Something to live for.
And Charles Street, I'm embarrassed to say, is Charles Street over by Mass General? Is that what you're talking about? Oh, that's Charles Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just all the
Do you
confusion.
like all that?
Yeah.
It's very
changing
it's
the
very
one
yeah.
way of Charles. That was when I was at Emerson
Oh, yeah.
College,
Mayor
changing
White, yeah.
Charles Street to a different direction.
I mean, people who live here their whole lives don't know how to navigate
Yeah.
the area. It's
Yes.
really bad.
I love the ground round reference, by the way,
I
Sue,
love-
because
God, I'm so
in the
glad it's
80s,
back.
I was penny a pound night. You
That's
stand on
right.
the
Yep.
scale,
Your kid.
and you're 64 pounds.
Yeah.
You paid 64 cents
It
for
was
a
great.
kid's meal at the ground
And I
round.
remember you get the little Sundays with little hats on them, little face, little cherries. Yeah,
A
I
lot of
spent a
good
lot of time at
memories
the ground.
in that circle.
At the ground round. So, Governor Healy's got this environmental bond bill. No, that wasn't the one I was going to talk about. The $300 million that she's got, this transportation bill. So she's got that going. But then we want money from the feds as well. And I'm wondering if we're going to get money from the feds, because the feds don't like Massachusetts. I mean, are we in trouble funding going forward?
I don't know that maybe they don't like Massachusetts. I don't think they share many of the values or priorities that we have in Massachusetts when it comes to a variety of issues, including transportation, right? I think that's just the reality of it. If I were the Commonwealth, if I were any state, but if I were Massachusetts, I'd really be seriously thinking about weaning ourselves a little bit off of federal dollars and thinking about how to be more self-reliant. That's not an easy thing to do. We're blessed with the millionaire's tax. That's a good thing, but it's not nearly enough to deal with all the issues that cry out for funding. We need to be a little bit entrepreneurial now in Massachusetts, and I would say in other states, thinking about how we fill those gaps. For example, I think personally it's a mistake for the governor to take immediately off the table the idea of tolling the Cape Cod bridges, right? I think we're going to have a serious conversation in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts soon about road user pricing. Let's not call it tolls, let's call it pricing. Call it congestion pricing, whatever. What's happening in New York is a big success. It's reducing traffic congestion, it's raising ample revenue, right?
That's a toll to come into the center of the city.
It's a toll to come into the center of the city,
Yep.
Manhattan. And so, and despite all of the noise about it, it's been generally well received by people, and it's working, right? And so in Massachusetts, we shouldn't be dismissive of similar ideas. I think we should be trying to engage people, again, early in a conversation about the need to do this, right? I don't think that we're all moving quickly to electric cars. That's happening more slowly. But still, reliance on the gas tax is the only major revenue source is a big, big, big mistake. The millionaire's tax does what it does, but it can't do more. I think we need to have this conversation about road pricing, have it in earnest, have it now, and think about implementing pilots in the not-too-distant future.
We only have a couple of minutes a minute left, actually, but we also call this congestion pricing that Charlie Baker didn't like, as I recall. So should we be tolling the bridges and have congestion pricing in Boston?
Well, if you want to reduce congestion and improve safety and improve options, the answer is absolutely yes. And I understand the politics of that are extremely challenging, but if you look at the top 10 most populous regions in the country, the only one that does not use time of day pricing to get better traffic outcomes on its roads to reduce congestion, the only one that does not is Greater Boston. Every other one does in some form. The most successful program, of course, is in New York City, this new congestion pricing program. One of my favorite anecdotes from this is that many of the folks that run the Broadway theaters and entertainment in the Midtown Manhattan, ahead of congestion pricing, were saying, we're worried that no one's going to show up at our shows anymore. This is going to discourage our customers. After congestion pricing came in earlier this year, Broadway had its highest revenue, most successful season ever in the history of Broadway this year, this spring, late winter and spring. So it's not just great for drivers, it's also great for businesses and, of course, transit riders as well.
All right, we've been speaking with Jim Aloisi, former Transportation Secretary for Massachusetts, and Chris Dempsey, who served as Assistant Transportation Secretary, both under Governor Deval Patrick. Thank you to both of you. Coming up after this quick break, just enough time for our Two More Things segment. I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Jim Browdy. She's Margery Egan, and you are listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com GBH News.
Great white sharks are seen every summer in New England waters, but there are other sharks swimming about, even in Boston Harbor.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's the biggest sand tiger we've ever had. So for the better part of 2 decades now, sand tigers have been protected. And we are optimistically starting to see some signs of recovery.
I'm Craig Lamolt. You can find the rest of that story online at gbhnews.org.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Bryant University, where learning goes beyond the classroom. With 4 years of real-world projects and global experiences, Bryant is committed to providing students with exceptional outcomes and skills to succeed on day one. Bryant.edu. And Mass Humanities, presenting Voices and Votes, Democracy in America, a Smithsonian exhibition. In Ashby now through September 6th, in collaboration with Massachusetts 250. masshumanities.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Sue O'Connell is in for Jim Browdy. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Okay, it is time for our venerable, or not so venerable, Two More Things segment. Sue, take it away.
I am loving the Rob Gronkowski Gronk playground that opened in Boston. Gronk unveiled this $2 million Gronk playground over at the Charles River Esplanade. It's fully ADA accessible. It was funded by his Gronk Nation Youth Foundation partnership and the Esplanade Association. Let's take a listen to Gronk at the playground opening.
When I came to the Patriots, one of the biggest lessons they instilled into me was that it wasn't just about the game of football. It sure was big time, no doubt about that. But it was about the importance of giving back to the community on a daily basis. So it's amazing now to give something back to the kids and families here to help create the same kind of opportunities that I had as a kid. Gronk Playground, touchdown spot!
You know,
I love Gronk.
That is pretty neat. Don't they say a lot of the structures are made in like the shapes of things having to do with football, which is kind of cool too.
You know?
Thematic, yeah.
And I got to tell you, Gronk, as I've shared a million times, my daughter and I, we spent a lot of time over at Boston Children's Hospital when she was young. Gronk was there on a regular basis.
Really?
Yeah, just really, you know, he's the kind of man-child you can really get behind. You know, I mean, he's a lot of fun. You know, we love the Gronk. So
and this is on the Esplanade, so if you go down there to just walk along the river,
you can see it. Yeah, it's great.
and you can just go over there and so good for him.
What's on your mind, Margery?
Well,
what's your thing?
This is apparently Trump has some afterlife fears, and we're going to play a little sound from him talking about his concern about those afterlife fears, basically whether or not he's going to make it into heaven. Here he is.
You know, if I can save 7,000 people a week from being killed, I think that's I want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well. I hear I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole. But if I can get to heaven, this will be one of the reasons.
Okay, he's talking about, of course, bringing an end his peacemaking efforts in Ukraine, which is a very serious matter.
They're
talking about saving people, which a lot of people wanted to have a ceasefire.
Margery,
we don't have it.
imagine being, you know, in the last chapter of your life, perhaps, and thinking, what do I need to do to make it right so that I can get past St. Peter and make it to heaven?
That's right.
And you have to save 7,000 lives a day just to be considered to get into heaven. I mean, I think he's starting from a deficit.
Well, but he's self-aware. He realizes he's at the bottom of the totem pole, heaven-wise, and he better clean up his act. So he has to explain himself at the pearly gates. But you know, the Catholics, you went to Catholic school, right? You got the purgatory thing there, right? So if you weren't quite up to snuff, then you'd have to spend, who knows, 10 minutes or 10,000 years in purgatory waiting to make the big transition to heaven. So maybe he's just trying to cut down his time. And I don't think he's a Catholic, though. Turn down that time in purgatory. I think he's Episcopalian, isn't he?
Do you think if we listed things on X, if we posted things he should do to make sure he gets into heaven, he might start being a president who cares more about individuals? Like if we gave him a list?
I don't know, but I think this has sparked a lot of concern about the cankle issue with the heavy set ankles, that maybe he has some health problems, and maybe he's thinking that he might have a lot of explaining to do, and he wants to have a little less explaining to do at the pearly gates.
All right, Desi.
All right.
All right. That's all the time we have for this segment, but we're going to come right back after the 1 o'clock news. The cleanup of Boston Harbor and Charles River is a success story, but there is, of course, more to do. We're going to talk to Chris Mancini of Save the Harbor, Save the Bay, and Max Rome of the Charles River Watershed Association. Next, I'm Sue O'Connell. I'm in for Jim Browdy. She is Margery Egan, and you are listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH. We're live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com at GBH News.
One individual can make a difference. A group of individuals can make a big difference. GBH is founded on listener support, and it's not about how much you give. It's about how many people get involved. Be the next to make a difference at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham. Their leading heart and vascular specialists are committed to providing breakthrough care to patients with cutting-edge research and innovative treatments. Learn more at massgeneralbrigham.org/heart. And the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, preserving the history of graphic communication from typewriters and presses to computers and copiers. Their expanded exhibit of rare and historic Bibles is now on view. More at museumofprinting.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Margery Egan, ahead on hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. Doesn't feel like it out there, but summer remains, and that means visits to local water holes. We'll check with Max Rome of Charles River Watershed Association and Chris Mancini of Save the Harbor and Save the Bay about urban beaches, water quality, and making the most of these last, if they come back, summer days.
And I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Jim Browdy. When officers probed a 22-year-old driver this weekend about how he ended up lodged on the tracks of the Green Line, he took full accountability for following his GPS. We're going to end our Wednesday by opening the phone lines and texts. How reliant are you on your phone to get you where you need to go? Is there something to be gained from the ancient skill of navigating on your own, maybe with an actual paper map? You can call or text next with our third hour of BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Defense officials from several countries, including Britain, are meeting at the Pentagon today. NPR's Lauren Frayer says the focus will be on Ukraine and ways to help Kyiv if Russia and Ukraine reach a peace agreement.
The UK and France are preparing to send peacekeepers to Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire. They call it a reassurance force. UK officials have said they'll help police Ukraine's skies and seas, but will not deploy British troops to the front line with Russia. The head of the UK's armed forces, Tony Radakin, is attending these Pentagon meetings. Among the details to be worked out is the possibility of a no-fly zone and whether European peacekeepers will be able to use US military bases in Europe as staging areas. About 30 countries have said they'll participate in a coalition of the willing, and about 10 have said they'll send troops. Lauren Frayer, NPR News, Edinburgh.
Federal public health employees in the U.S. are asking Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to stop spreading inaccurate information and to support his staff in the wake of a deadly attack earlier this month at the CDC. NPR's Ping Wong reports on the letter addressed to Kennedy and members of Congress.
On August 8th, a gunman fired hundreds of rounds at the CDC in Atlanta while hundreds of employees sheltered in place. Authorities say he was motivated by his discontent with COVID vaccines. Dr. Fiona Havers, a former CDC official who left in June, says employees are angry and traumatized.
It's really critical that the scale of this event is recognized
and that people that work in public health and public health in general are given much more support than they're being given right now.
After the attack, Kennedy toured the CDC and posted his support for workers on social media, but many say he could do more. Over 750 current and former federal health workers signed the letter, which called for Kennedy to stand up for the CDC science and stop endangering the nation's health. Ping Huang, NPR News.
In North Carolina, Governor Josh Stein has declared a state of emergency, with Hurricane Erin forecast to bring storm surges and dangerous wind gusts to the state. Bradley George of member station WUNC reports at last check, Erin was about 365 miles southeast of Cape Hatteras, with top sustained winds of 110 miles per hour.
August is usually a busy time on North Carolina's Outer Banks, but residents and tourists were ordered to leave Hatteras and Ocracoke Islands. Governor Stein says people who live elsewhere on the coast should be prepared to evacuate. Shelters have opened on the mainland. Erin would be the worst storm to affect the Outer Banks since 2019. That's when Hurricane Dorian swamped Ocracoke Island with 7 feet of water. For NPR News, I'm Bradley George in Chapel Hill.
From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Emerson College laying off staff and cutting its budget by at least 5% as it braces for a drop in enrollment this fall. From our higher ed desk, GBH's Kirk Carapezza reports the move comes amid a growing trust gap between longtime faculty and Emerson's president.
Some professors have described President Jay Bernhardt's leadership style as vindictive and imperialistic, and several say he's been isolated and distant, restricting access to his office with a locked elevator and new secured door. Bernhardt took criticism for cracking down on campus protest over Gaza last year. Emerson journalism professor Doug Struck says since then he's seemed fearful of students and faculty.
You don't need those kinds of security measures if you have established some sort of a relationship and some sort of a trust with the people that you're working with. You earn leadership status. You don't declare it.
In a statement, an Emerson spokesperson says Bernhardt remains confident in Emerson's future and describes the new security measures as the norm. Kirk Carapezza, GBH News.
As we've heard from our colleagues in Washington, Hurricane Erin is making its way north. A high surf advisory remains in effect until 8 a.m. Saturday for Barnstable County and southern Plymouth County. As Erin moves northeast well off the coast, we can expect large breaking waves increasing each day, peaking on Friday with waves 4 to 8 feet in the surf zone. There'll also be dangerous swimming and surfing conditions with localized beach erosion. We're at 65 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, where drivers can compare direct rates using Progressive's rate comparison tool. Customers can see options and rates side by side. More at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Braude and Margery Egan are not here today. Jim Braude's not here. I'm here.
He's not here.
Maven, Sue
He is
O'Connell
not here.
Is not here. Sue O'Connell is here.
I am here.
Jim is going to be back next week. But anyway, we are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Michelle Wu will be with us August 26th from 12 to 1, and the next day her opponent, Josh Kraft, will be with us at noontime, both at the library. Okay, so for a lot of the 20th century, Boston Harbor and the Charles River were notoriously nasty, but thanks to decades-long cleaning up efforts and infrastructure investments, Greater Boston has some of the cleanest beaches in the country, not all. The Charles even has sanctioned swimming days, but heavy rains and hot temperatures and aging infrastructure threaten that project. And this week, over 60 beaches across the Commonwealth were closed due to dangerous bacteria growth. Our next guests are working to keep our waters clean so we can all enjoy them, summer or not. Joining us is Chris Mancini, Executive Director of Save the Harbor, Save the Bay, and Max Rome, a Senior Stormwater Program Manager at Charles River Watershed Association. Max and Chris, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having us, Margery and Sue.
All right, so I've mentioned 5 million times already today, a Revere native, you know.
America's first public beach.
That's right, indeed. Also lived in Winthrop near Deer Island.
Excellent.
And a few years ago, we're on a whale watch with some folks from all around the world. And I was horrified that our whale watch host did not point out the Deer Island facility. And so this lovely family visiting from India said, "What's that?" And off I went, explaining how wonderful Deer Island was and wondering why we don't talk more about it. But that, for folks that don't know, that helps clean things that go down our toilet and then allows us to have a clean bay and a clean Revere Beach, which I did not have growing up very much. What's the status of our beach water right now? What's the biggest danger to making it unsafe for swimming and for playing in?
The most beautiful building on the harbor, Deer Island Sewage Treatment Plant,
Indeed.
cleans 300 million gallons of sewage every day that used to go right into the harbor. But you've got our coastal saltwater beaches, you've got our ponds, lakes, and rivers, our freshwater beaches, and on the saltwater side, you just really want to watch out for those bacteria that's carried by sewage. And we're mostly dealing with that when you get a heavy rainstorm these days.
How does that impact the water? We get a heavy rainstorm. How does that end up in our beaches?
We're still in the process of separating our sewer systems from our stormwater systems. So sometimes you can have a heavy rainfall that triggers what people call a CSO, a combined sewer overflow. But even in places where we've done that successfully, where we've separated those systems, as long as you've got an outfall pipe on the river, on the coast, you can get that, what we call the burp. It flushes that pipe out, and anything that's accumulated in there over the past days or weeks, you get kind of a hit of bacteria. The tides and the natural processes will break down in 24 to 48 hours, depending on your beach.
Well, Chris, before you get to the Charles, it was really heartening to read about South Boston water. It is so often so clean. I mean, people may know, it's Carson Beach over there, M Street Beach. There's all these yuppies that have moved there, that are partying all the time in the beaches, and they're looking really great in their bathing suits. People have remarked on that. And then, but South Boston, years ago, obviously, you couldn't swim in it at all. And I remember as a young reporter taking tours out to Boston Harbor, and it would be gurgling then, before we spent a lot of money to clean that whole thing up. And so most of the time you can swim in South Boston.
Cleanest urban beaches in the country, right here in South Boston.
Yeah.
And, Pleasure Bay, M Street Beach have gotten a perfect rating. We do a water quality report card every year, and those beaches have gotten 100% the last 6 to 10 years.
Yeah.
We put all the pipes underground into storage tunnels, and I know Max is going to talk a little bit about the prospect for that at the Charles as well. But as long as you take the flow off of the beach, you're really going to minimize that opportunity for that bacteria to grow.
Yeah.
But Max, the Charles is not doing that well at the moment?
Yeah, we're not quite there yet. And I think I would take a step back and share, the big picture a little bit.
Let's share it.
I'd love to just start with the Clean Water Act, something we're so lucky to have in the United States. And in 1972, we decided as a country that by 1983, the waters of the United States would be fishable and swimmable. And by 1985, the year of my birth, there would be no pollution discharges into the waters of the United States. And we're not there yet.
No, we're not.
That's what we're working towards. That's what we're all a part of. And, what's happened with the Boston Harbor cleanup, what's happened with the Charles River, what we have done is made incredible progress. It used to be that the river and the harbor were kind of disgusting all of the time. Even when it wasn't raining, there was sewage that was dripping into the Charles. There was sewage that was being discharged into the harbor. Where we are now is a lot of the kind of easier work has been done. When it's dry, the river is very clean. When it's dry, the harbor is very clean. But when it rains, we have what we call wet weather pollution, which it could be combined sewer overflow, or it could just be stormwater. The guy who's spraying out his dumpster into the storm drain, pet waste that's left on the sidewalk. That's what's getting into the river, and that's what's a real challenge right now.
From my understanding, and you guys are the experts, but that when we're getting with climate change is more dramatic rainfalls, and so it's not just a little sprinkle. It's like a torrent of rain comes down, and runoff is becoming a huge problem.
That's exactly it, and we're kind of the first generation to be dealing with that issue and saying okay, the sewage is a big deal, but now, hey, the stormwater itself is the huge source of pollution. That stormwater pollution is why we're not able to swim in the Charles right now. So something I'll share is that we're in the middle, kind of at the end of the beginning of an incredible effort to reduce stormwater pollution into the whole Charles River from the whole 300 square mile watershed by 50% by the year 2038. And it's a effort that really deserves applause for its kind of ambition and steadiness.
Well, let's give
applause.
some applause.
Yeah, there you go.
Some applause. But at the same time, we have, you mentioned the founding of the EPA around that time, Richard Nixon, which was a Republican, as we all remember. And now we have a guy that's talks about clean air and clean water, but is doing
Only
everything.
when it comes out of shower heads, though.
Yeah, it does.
The shower pressure.
It does seem that maybe doing a lot of things to make the water less clean and the air less. So how does that affect your project, and then how does it affect what you're doing? I mean, how dependent are we on the EPA now and federal funds?
It's really nice to have big EPA dollars to spend on these infrastructure projects, absolutely. But I tend to be an optimist. We can keep pushing along throughout. I recently moved up to the Lynn Swampscott border. We have the dirtiest beach in the Commonwealth up there. But the city of Lynn is separating the West Lynn sewer system. They're still working on that. Boston Water and Sewer. Every day they spend time going up those pipes, looking for cracks, looking for illicit discharges so that they can keep, it's like a road, it's going to get a pothole, it's going to get a crack. You got to keep that maintenance up. So as Max said, we've done a lot of you said easy work, but a lot of we got like the 90%, the first 25 miles of the marathon before we hit the wall. But we got to keep inching away at those last couple of feet.
And is your project going to be affected by EPA money being withdrawn?
You know what where we are really feeling it is the loss of some great partners and some people that we've worked with over the years. But at the same time, what I do
because they've lost their jobs, you mean?
Yeah, or they've taken early retirement,
Yep.
or they've been maybe shuffled to a different place. But I think there's so much momentum. The practitioners, the engineers know the right things to do now. The cities, know what needs to happen.
Max, it's funny. I'm in reading up on this. I'm also thinking about how we keep learning the same things that we have probably known as humans for a very long time. I remember I was in Puerto Rico with met some people from Houston just before the hurricane hit, and they were talking about how all this concrete was great in Houston. This is great. It's great. It's like then the hurricane hit. Water had nowhere to go. There was massive flooding. Had they been able to plan for vegetation and runoff when they built Houston, the hurricane might not have done that much damage. In Newton, you're looking at issues like this, talking about ways to manage flood problems by doing what?
Yeah, thank you. That's exactly right. So, in Newton, we're working on a project at Cheesecake Brook, which is one of the first tributaries that comes into the Charles River that's above ground, above the Watertown Dam. So basically it goes Muddy River, then all the other streams are buried underground and coming through pipes until you get up to Cheesecake Brook. And Cheesecake is kind of a microcosm of the work that needs to happen in the whole watershed. We are a watershed organization, and that means if we're trying to clean up the Charles, we need to deal with every single drop of rain that ends up in the Charles River. And one way to do that is to focus on the tributaries, the little streams that bring water to the Charles. So Cheesecake Brook, is a classic example where it used to be a whole system of marshes. Then it got drained to make way for agriculture, deal with malaria and mosquitoes. Then they said, hey, this is some nice land. Let's build a whole city here. And then the drainage that they had created all of a sudden was a conveyance for flooding. So kind of what had been marshes is now a channelized stream. About a mile of it runs under the pike. And what we're doing now is trying to figure out how can we reverse that? How can we find opportunities to take that water that's now just rushing off of parking lots and into the stream and get it to soak into the ground? And at the same time, how can we take what's been a kind of weed whacked and mowed corridor next to a channelized brook and turn that back into something that's very alive, that's a corridor for aquatic organisms and
What's a rain garden?
Oh, thank you, Margery. So, a rain garden is a really simple idea, which is just, hey, can we carve out a little bowl where water can collect and run into the ground before it goes into the storm drain. And I'll go kind of one step further, which is that all of these stormwater pollution problems that we have, that we've been talking about, have a kind of simple solution, which is if we could take the first inch of rain that comes off of all of these hard surfaces in our city and get them to soak into the ground, what we know from recent studies and modeling is that that would basically recreate the hydrology of this area before we built our city. So, we're kind of in a moment of figuring out how to have our cake and eat it too. Can we have this city that lets us get around so quickly, that lets us, walk on a muddy day, but at the same time have clean rivers and have nice high water tables and have systems that are less susceptible to drought?
Just one more thing about rain garden. Is that something that a municipality has to do, or is that something that individuals can do, or what?
Yeah, both. So, right now, municipalities are all engaged in figuring out where they can build, big rain gardens. And in fact, you can't really build a new parking lot above a certain size, in Boston and the Charles River watershed without doing some of these techniques, which sometimes get called low-impact design.
We're talking with Chris Mancini, Executive Director of Save the Harbor and Save the Bay, and Max Roma, Senior Stormwater Program Manager at Charles River Watershed Association. We'll finish with some solutions so we're not depressed, but it was really depressing to read in the Globe about 62 beaches closed to bacteria in Massachusetts. It's just so unbelievable to think you live on a pond, you live on a kettle pond, you live on a lake, and you can't swim in it, and your dog might die if the dog goes into the water. So this is about climate change. It's about septic tank runoff. It's about people fertilizing their lawns. Am I missing something?
It's a good list.
Old broken pipes.
Old
infrastructure. I mean, you say, I tend to be an optimist. It's 60 beaches, but that's out of over 1,000. That's like 1,100 beaches. And I think it's also important for people to understand. I like people to take some hope, right? As you said, we don't want to end up depressed. You've got different ecologies, different situations in freshwater versus saltwater.
Mm-hmm.
So, Save the Harbor, we tend to deal with the saltwater stuff.
That's right.
And
they banned the fertilization of lawns in Nantucket because of the ocean.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And because you have that tidal change, because you have the Deer Island sewage treatment plant, the saltwater beaches, not every single one, but for the most part, they're doing really well. So I like to make sure people have some satisfaction, some feeling of assurance about our coastal beaches here in the Bay State.
We have a texter, Matt from Winthrop, wants to let people know that Deer Island is a wonderful place and not just for the wastewater treatment, and I would agree with this. He runs on Deer Island 4 to 5 times a week. You have a panoramic path with amazing views, trails, hills, wildlife, rabbits, coyotes, my favorite, foxes, and many types of bird. Once saw a snowy owl and also a bald eagle. Wow. So I would endorse Deer Island. Yeah. I might become the poster. I might be spokesperson for Deer Island, I think.
Okay. Well, Chris is in the ocean. I want to get back to the ponds and the lakes because I'm really upset about the ponds and the lakes. What should people be doing about this? I mean, they can't put in their own sewage system if they have a septic tank.
So much. We have so much power here. And I think that the first thing I want to say is we are going to get what we're willing to work for. In 1947, there were 6 public swimming beaches on the Charles River. That's where people went when it was hot out.
Wow.
We need to be angry that we can't swim in the Charles River.
Yeah.
If it was just for bacterial pollution, there are spots in the Charles, like down by North Point Park, that are clean, up to 90% or 95% of summer days. They're really, really clean when it's not wet out, except for cyanobacterial blooms. But where there is a will, there is a way. We know what the solutions are. It's about limiting stormwater pollution, and it's also about investing in some of these more creative ideas. We've mentioned a little bit some of the cool stuff that's happening at Kings Beach, but I'm gonna.
That's the UV light thing.
This is right. So this is a system of saying, hey, we know there's major pollution coming in through this pipe network. Let's actually just go ahead and disinfect it and clean up the beach that way. And I'll put another kind of big idea out there. We haven't talked a lot about cyanobacterial blooms.
Yes.
But they're blooms of potentially harmful, potentially toxic algae that happen, especially in the Charles when it gets really hot and stagnant. There's one right now in the Charles. If you go out and take a look, it's pretty green. And they're caused by stormwater pollution that just is putting too much food, too much nutrients in the river.
And when you say stormwater pollution, this is where people fertilize their lawns with fecal matter, and then there's these huge rainstorms, and this runs off and gets into, it's not just from the lawns, but pipes, as you say, but it gets into the lakes and the kettle ponds. The Cape is full of kettle ponds, and a lot of them are closed, and it gets into the Charles River as well.
Well, this is something that's so interesting to me and is a little bit different than how we sometimes think about pollution. It is things like fertilizer, but it's also things like leaf litter. So what we've done, kettle ponds are wonderful to think about because they're one of the most sensitive natural systems that we have in New England. And in the olden days, what entered the kettle ponds, only a very little trickled into the kettle ponds from over the banks.
Yep.
But now those kettle ponds, because of the pipes that are entering them, are connected to a much, much larger drainage area. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing in the Charles River. We have a 300 square mile watershed, and about 20% of that is just draining right into the river through pipes. So organic material that should have been decomposing in the forest, that should have been becoming soil, is now decomposing in the river. Mm. The river is more connected to the land than it used to be, and that's causing problems. So it's a imbalance of hydrology and ecology.
And let me ask you a stupid question because I don't understand any of this very well. When you're talking about pipes going into lakes and kettle ponds, pipes from what? The septic tanks?
Well,
what are the pipes from? They have leaching fields for
septic tanks. The septic tanks, right, go into leach fields, but very often there are stormwater pipes. For instance,
oh, okay,
Jamaica Pond is another beautiful kettle pond in our area. And
does that have cyanobacteria in Jamaica Pond?
They do, unfortunately.
Yeah, and there's no houses there either.
No, but there's a DCR parkway that drains into the pond. There are walkways that drain to the pond. So it's a ubiquitous challenge.
Yeah, is some of it salt, too?
Salt is an issue. It's kind of an emerging issue that, especially for our smaller brooks and streams, can be really acute. In some cases, it can be the number one issue. But for the Charles, for swimmability, for ponds, it's really that nutrient pollution, that bacterial pollution, that's still kind of the thing we need to focus on.
Chris, we're getting a number of texters who are just talking about how much they love recreational boating, they love being at the beach, they love the harbor, and they're wondering what they can do, to both of you, what they could do to help keep things clean and raise awareness and volunteer or participate.
Well, like Max said, we do have a lot of power here. We're so used to there being big systems change that we're all waiting on. But to Max's point, you can look at your lawn. You can look at your property at the smallest scale and build a rain garden. You can depave part of your driveway if you're not using it. Little things like that. If everybody does it, it really adds up. And then there's 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. You get involved in your local politics. That's what's happening in Swampscott, where we started talking about this at Save the Harbor. This is the dirtiest beach. We'd like to see it change. A new grassroots community group sprung up. People started going to the meetings, and you got Lynn and Swampscott to talk to each other, to look at the actual maps of their pipes, which ones had they fixed, which ones hadn't they fixed, and then coming together on this pilot UV program that kept the beach open this summer during that thing 20% more often than it did last year.
And how does UV light kill bacteria?
It really just mimics the sun, right? You're just zapping it. Some of the criticisms are, well, now you just have clean poop on the beach, but there's also filters.
Is it still poop if it's clean?
Who knows?
No,
Who knows?
I don't think so.
No, you're disinfecting it before it gets out there.
But I'll say a cool thing about that too is the Charles River is kind of a living river, and it has the ability to clean itself as it flows down towards the towards the harbor.
Yeah, things have been going in water for a long time.
That's right.
It's not like
That's
it's
right.
just us.
So you guys are both fairly optimistic. So let's leave on an optimistic note. You mentioned getting involved in your local town and getting involved with politicians, trying to urge them to do better. But give us. You mentioned your project, but give us an optimistic note to go out. And we'll start with you, Max.
Well, I think one thing I'll say is that this moment right now is a really critical moment for the Charles, because MWRA, the City of Cambridge, the City of Somerville are updating their long-term control plan, which is the plan that they are going to be legally obligated to stick to reduce combined sewer overflow. So, if you're interested in learning more, cutthecrapcharles.org.
Cutthecrapcharles.org. I love it.
But it's an incredible opportunity for us to insist that this next control effort be ambitious. And just like for the South Boston beaches, there's a CSO control tunnel that not only stops sewage from entering the river, but if a storm's going to be less than a certain size, like up to a 5-year rainstorm, that stormwater gets trapped in the tunnel. So this is a system that was designed to reduce sewage overflow, but actually helps protect even against stormwater flooding and
Chris?
stormwater pollution.
Yeah, I think get to know your beach when you're looking at the coast. Get to know it. Get out there and use it. Save the Harbor does free cruises to the Harbor Islands. You can come out with us anytime we're going. But yeah, really try to understand the spaces you go. Realize how far we've come, and that's how I choose to look at it.
Yeah.
And then really to finish the job, we just got to really drill down on really specific issues and solve them one by one.
So you think that we can actually keep our water clean going forward? Should kids are getting out of college now look for jobs in environmental? There's a lot of people getting out of college now that went in thinking they were going to join, the EPA.
Yeah, maybe environmental engineering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What I have seen the field of environmental engineering change so much, even just in the last 20 years, that there's so much more focus on habitat restoration.
Yeah.
Okay.
We know that that's what needs to happen. That is the next chapter in New England.
And it solves for more than just that. It's better for the creatures, it's better for us, it's better for flooding, it's better for water quality, it's better. It's not just a one issue thing.
Yeah. Well, I feel better. Do you feel better, Sue? Yeah, I do.
That's what we're here for.
I'm looking forward to my job as Deer Island spokesperson.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm looking forward to that. All right.
That was beautiful.
Thank you very much.
An ode to Deer Island.
We've been speaking with Chris Mancini, Executive Director of Save the Harbor, Save the Bay, and Max Rome, a Senior Stormwater Program Manager at Charles River Watershed Association. Thanks to both of you for coming in. We learned a lot. Thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break. We are opening the phone lines to get your thoughts on over-reliance on GPS. What's so bad about an old-fashioned map? I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Jim Browdy. She is Margery Egan, and you are listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, staff cuts and leadership questions spark tension at Emerson College. With Hurricane Erin shifting course, coastal businesses are breathing a sigh of relief. And a mass grave of children is being uncovered in Ireland, raising new questions about the Catholic Church. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Babson College. You can learn to lead with impact and become a driving force for change. Babson's virtual graduate admissions workshop is on August 27th. Registration at babson.edu/gradworkshop. And Mass Humanities, presenting Voices and Votes, Democracy in America, a Smithsonian exhibition. In Ashby now through September 6th, in collaboration with Massachusetts 250. masshumanities.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Sue O'Connell in for Jim Browdy. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. So, gone are the days of printing out MapQuest instructions before a journey or keeping those tri-flawed I can't even pronounce that, tri-fold road maps from AAA in your center console. Even Garmin has pivoted away from the navigation systems to smartwatches. With the rise of our surveillance state comes one benefit. We all have a state-of-the-art GPS in our pockets wherever. Easier than ever to chart courses to parts unknown. But as one 22-year-old in an Acura found out over the weekend, using GPS still requires critical thinking skills. Somehow, he ended up driving the wrong way onto the Green Line tracks at 1 o'clock in the morning. When the cops got there, they asked him how he got there, and he told him the GPS made him do it. That's how he wound up on the tracks. But anyway, the lines are open for you at 877-301-8970 to call or text. Do you use Google Maps, Apple Maps, Waze, or some other navigation app on your phone to get everywhere? It's not just like if you're driving to someplace challenging, like to New York City, you need to figure out how to get from the Bronx to Brooklyn, or if you're driving somewhere far away from home. Do we become so dependent that you use it when you're driving like 6 blocks to the supermarket to check and see what the traffic is? Are we completely over-reliant on the technology that helps us move through the world? And have you forgotten how to get any place because you are using your GPS all the time and outsourcing our thinking to a satellite image that was taken quite a while ago? Horror stories about using your GPS and turning off your brain to do it. 877-301-8970. Didn't you tell me you drove someplace crazy with your GPS before the show?
Yes. I mean, I use my GPS all the time. Every single trip I use it, and I'll tell you why. One is that it alerts me if there's a road closure. I don't know if this is true for you, Margery, but even though I work in the news at NBC 10 Boston, we can report every single minute that the Callahan Tunnel is closed or the whatever is closed. And then I'm driving, I'm like, what's all this traffic for? I'm so shocked. So I use Waze, and it tells me where to avoid, so that helps me. When I haven't listened to it, I've found myself up in a jam, like, why would it be taking me through the airport to get, and then I'm like, oh, because that's what it was trying to give me a shortcut. But I was on Nantucket, I think last year or the year before, didn't have a map, had my GPS at night, coming back from a restaurant. We're staying in the middle of the island, and it took me somewhere, I have no idea where I was, because it's giving you the best route it thinks is for you, but it's not necessarily the easiest route. And then, of course, I lost cell service, and I'm trapped in the middle of...
That's the worst. That's the worst.
Some rich person's driveway, with my little phone trying to find my way back to my little Airbnb. So I rely on it a lot. How about you? Have you had a GPS-driven, no pun intended?
A few years ago, I took my children for like a roots tour to Ireland, and I was going, I think it was somewhere near Dingle. I've forgotten. But anyway, it took us up the side of a mountain and one of those little narrow roads, and it was two-way, and I'm in this van, and of course you're driving on the wrong side of the road anyway in Ireland, which is unnerving enough, and I panicked because I thought we were going to wind up in the front page of the Herald,
Yeah, you don't.
Columnist kills children in GPS mistake in Ireland. So I had that bad incident. And another time, because I'm such a dope, I inadvertently put on the avoid all toll roads.
Oh, I did that once.
When I was driving somewhere.
I did that once too.
And I thought, why am I?
Why is it taking me 500 years?
Yeah, exactly. Because I turned off the toll road thing, and so instead of being on the Mass Pike, which is often terrible traffic anyway, but I was on side roads, and it took me 3 hours. Someplace it should have taken me about 45 minutes.
I also I think I was in Colorado, and I put walk instead of drive. So that was a whole nother route that it was taking me instead of the right way. And what I love...
walk instead of drive.
So I'm like, am I, and what I love about young people, though, like people under 30, is that I have a map in my glove compartment just in case. I didn't in Nantucket, but, they don't, if you take it out and show it to them, they don't really understand how to use it. And also the feet, like it used to be, right? Take the third left. That's what they would tell you. You ask somebody for directions. And now it's the name of the street in 300 feet.
That's right. That's right.
Unless you have the audio directions on, young people, for the most part, have no idea how far 350 feet is, how far a mile is, and then they're looking for the name of the street, which, as we know, sometimes is not there, or the routes are unclear. So it
seems like your daughter may have driven you over the railroad tracks inadvertently, Sue. Is that what's going on here?
No, she likes to drive by exits in streets. That's her thing. Like, she's like, I had no idea it was coming right up. I was like, it's 150 feet. Well, how do I know what 150 feet is? I'm like, walk 150 steps and see what it is.
Okay, I also think a lot of us have lost our sense of direction because we don't rely on our memory anymore.
Did you really know where you were going when you were young? Because I know, when I came into Boston to go to Emerson, the old Emerson that was over on Beacon Street.
Boston's very confusing.
Yeah, even though it's laid out kind of alphabetically. Yeah. But I remember the day I put the city together. Like, I came out at a different train station. I'm like, oh, this neighborhood's connected to that neighborhood. You just kind of haphazardly went around, right?
That's right. Yeah, well, I always got lost in the financial district. I found the financial district very challenging. It's good to have the GPS if you go in there. You can't see because of the skyscrapers and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, let us start with some calls. We want to hear about good, bad, and ugly with your GPS. Dan in Dorchester, thanks for calling.
So I'm a route salesman, and I use GPS not because I don't know where I'm going, but it tells you when there's traffic. It gives you shortcuts. It tells you when there's a police officer.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one when the police are hiding, so you can slow down. You ever notice how all of a sudden everybody starts slowing down because they've all got their...
Except for that one guy.
Yeah, they've all got their GPS and they know the police officer's behind the corner.
Dan, are you old enough to remember, or do you know folks who used to have the big, for traveling, because I used to travel, I used to do record promotion, I had the big books of all the areas. So if you were looking for a street, you would look at you'd look at the columns and the numbers, and you would find it, and then you would have to map your own way to get there. Dan, have you ever had to do that?
I have, but then I also remember AAA when they would give you the little book that you would flip up, and it would tell you how to get places. I used to have to drive back and forth from Mass to Maryland, and those books were fantastic.
Do you get yelled at in the car if you have your map, your GPS on for a short trip? Because this is the argument I get, not with my daughter, but with other people in my household, where it's like, why are you going this way? And I'm like, because Waze is telling me to go this way, and I believe Waze over you. Do you have those arguments?
No, not really, because, I only use it to make sure I don't get stuck in traffic. Mm-hmm. So I end up surprising people with new routes.
Yeah, especially the people who don't want you driving by their house because suddenly they're on the Waze map, right?
Okay.
All right, Dan, thanks for
Dan,
great calls.
for the call.
Travel safe.
Ted or Todd, I'm not sure who it is, from Natick said, in the early days of satellite navigation, we were on vacation in Italy. The navigation almost took us off a cliff, which would have been a quick end to the vacation. And another texter says, we do love Waze, but my husband and I were heading to my brother's house in Saranac, Michigan, 11 p.m., using Waze, and it took us into a cornfield.
Yes. Pam in Maine said, I had a bad accident. I hope everyone's okay. In Worcester, because the GPS told me to cross a busy highway. I love it when the GPS has the address wrong, like you put the address in right, but it's across the street. Like that Dunkin' Donuts up on Route 9 over by the oil change place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you put the address in, it's across the street. So it can be really irritating.
Yeah, that is true. That is a problem. Mm-hmm. If you're on one of those divided highways, one is going east, one is going west, and you have to cross over. That is a very, very astute point there, Sue O'Connell.
Thank you very much.
You're
Let's
welcome.
talk to Lorraine in Brookline. Speaking of Brookline, hi, Lorraine. Welcome to Boston Public Radio.
Thank you very much. I'm in the drive-in lane at Burger King, so we may get interrupted. The GPS has not always been my friend. It has taken me to places where it says, you have arrived, and I'm at a dead end in the middle of a desert, and there's like nothing there. And I've followed the directions. Very recently, it took me on a dry riverbed for about a mile, and I couldn't turn around, and it was all rocks, and it took me an hour and a half to get to the place that was supposed to take me 10 minutes.
That's not good, but Lorraine. But much more important, everybody here wants to know, what are you ordering at Burger King?
Oh, double hamburger, small fries, and small cup.
Oh, okay.
No
cheeseburger. You don't like cheese? You don't like cheese? What's up with?
Like cheese.
You don't? Okay.
Do not like cheese on my burgers.
I like it. Okay, that
And
you're
you
getting
are
approval.
and you prefer Burger King to McDonald's and Wendy's? Is that the
I
deal?
do.
You do. Okay.
It's true. It's true.
Okay.
Now, the other thing is that yesterday I an address in. Oh, sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
That's okay. That's okay.
Give me a second here.
It's okay, Lorraine. We thank you for the call, and
That's
good
all right,
luck
Lorraine. Thanks so much.
good luck at Burger King. Hope you enjoy the hamburger. Although without cheese, it just wouldn't be
Yeah,
the same
it's
for
okay.
me.
Now I want one.
877-301-8970.
Well,
We're
you were on
talking about-
vacation. We did a whole half hour on hamburgers. You know,
did?
So you're getting it started again.
Did you get any hamburgers to eat?
No, Jamie had promised us hamburgers, but we didn't get any.
Yeah, when you start talking about hamburgers, you really need to eat a hamburger,
Yeah.
I have found.
Marjorie, have you found, do you think that relying on this GPS has helped us directionally or harmed us? Like, I don't know if I ever really had a great sense of direction to begin with,
Yeah.
but I don't know if I know how everything is connected anymore.
Well, it's true. It takes away. It does take away your I would say muscle memory, but it's not muscle memory. Whatever it is, it gets you to go places. But when you have to drive something, if you have to drive someplace that's stressful. Like I said, in New York City, if you're driving from, you get to the Bronx, and then you got to go to Brooklyn, if you have somebody you're going to visit in Brooklyn, that is a very stressful drive.
Yeah.
If I didn't have a GPS to do that, it would be so hard. Remember, you'd have the maps in your hand, and you never get it right, and you're getting off at the wrong exit.
You want to
have
hear a
get
horror
back on.
story?
Just stop at the gas station.
Yeah.
The gas station didn't know where to go, and sometimes it was late at night, and you're a little nervous going into the gas station.
Yep.
It's dark. So yes, it's improved my life, I would say, overall.
My career in records almost completely ended when I was the promotion manager for Atlantic Records in New York City in the late 1980s, and I was like 25 years old, and my job was to take Tommy Shaw, who was the lead singer of Styx.
Oh my gosh!
Drive him all the way out to Long Island, to the tip of Long Island, in order to have him do a radio interview, and then drive him back and go to New Jersey to the arena. What's New Jersey? The Meadowlands in New Jersey, and I had written directions, but I didn't have a map, and this was Tommy Shaw's debut solo concert. And I got lost.
Oh,
and we had no maps. I had just these written directions. He didn't know where we were, even though we lived in New York.
My
and
God.
we pulled up to the Meadowlands parking lot, and his name is up on the marquee. He was opening act, and this was his big debut as a solo artist. And they wouldn't let us in because we didn't have any backstage passes yet. And he literally got out of my car, our rental car, and ran through the parking lot saying, "I am Tommy Shaw."
Oh my God!
Yeah, horrified.
Did he make it?
I hope he did, but for the rest of my career at Atlantic Records, they had people who were with me whenever I had to go somewhere.
Okay. So you don't know if he got up on the stage and performed or not. You didn't find that out.
I was sure I was going to be fired.
Okay.
So I just kind of went to. I had to go. Yeah, I just went back to my little apartment in Greenwich Village and hope for the
apartment
best.
in Greenwich Village. How cool are you?
Yeah, it's very cool. 123
very
Bank
cool.
Street. Yep, very cool.
Lewis in the truck. What do you think, Lewis?
Oh, hi. Oh, it's so good to be on here.
Yeah, so good you called.
I love you guys.
Thank you.
So I'm a tractor trailer driver, and I actually had a customer up in Maine where I went by the address that was on our tablet, and then I go down a residential area, and I'm about 100 feet in. I'm like, this doesn't really look right, and I ended up on a dead end. Where I was supposed to be was just beyond the water on the other side of where I was at.
And you're in a huge tractor trailer, and you're in a dead end?
70
Oh, my
70 foot
God.
tractor trailer. I had to have police assistance. And
Oh,
I had to
my
back the truck
gosh.
up 100 feet back up to the main road and to get turned around.
So I have a question for you, Lewis, as a tractor trailer driver. How many people do you pass on the highway that you see texting on their cell phones?
Oh, my goodness. Not just texting, doing makeup.
Yeah.
Doing some inappropriate things.
I was going to say, this is a whole nother show. We should have Jonathan back.
What kind of inappropriate things? Are we talking about sexual things? That kind of stuff?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh.
Yes,
There you go.
All right, Jonathan.
Oh my God!
Thank you.
Well,
you
you
so
know
much.
what? It gives a little. It gives
Keeps
a little.
you moving.
Keeps you moving. Gives you a little
Keeps you
lilt
moving.
in your step, or not in your step because you're sitting behind the wheel, the tractor trailer, but whatever.
We have
Louis,
a
that was a great call.
Thank you, Louis. We have a YouTube commenter who says, my favorite directions are in the form of turn left where X used to be. Remember
That's a
that
good
place
one.
that used to be
Yeah,
take a left?
That's a good one.
You know.
Betty from Windham, New Hampshire. Thank you for calling.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. What I wanted to tell you about is on Waze.
Yeah.
My grandkids figured out that there's a way to record your own voice.
Really?
And so they recorded their voice.
Oh.
I'm 11 years old. So now when I travel, I hear them tell me, like, Grandma, they don't say Grandma, but turn right in 200 feet for rerouting, which is like, Grandma, you made a mistake. You made a mistake.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
That's
Oh,
sweet.
no.
I love that. I didn't know about that feature. I do know they have that you can get accents.
Yeah.
And you can get attitudes. And sometimes.
Well, that's another question. Do you like it when they're talking to you, or do you like to have the screen right in front of you or a little bit to the right of the steering wheel? Do you want them talking to you?
I don't want to be distracted by the vision, so I use just the voice. And it's really cool to have these grandkids tell me where to go.
I love it.
That's pretty good, Betty. I didn't know that.
That's great.
You know, what Texas says from driving around New Hampshire, he says using the GPS is just like remembering the phone numbers. Do you remember any? And that's so true. We all have everybody's phone numbers in our phone. And so when somebody asks you the number of someone that you're not calling all the time, you don't know it. So we used to remember everybody. Do you remember the phone of when we used to have just 5 digits? Of
I
the host?
remember Atlantic, ATL. My phone number was ATL 42809.
Yeah.
Yeah, my growing up phone
Mine
number.
was 31613. There was no.
Let's call it now and see who answers.
Well, you have to get 508.
Okay, sorry.
You have to do 508. But they didn't have 508s then.
Right.
That was southeastern Massachusetts. Up here, of course, is 617 and 413 out in the burbs.
Another famous
out west.
Sue Gets Lost doing record promotion is when I worked for A&M Records here in Boston, and New England was my territory, and I had to go up to Bangor, Maine, right? And I actually thought that 60 miles from the airport to wherever I had to go in Maine on Route 1 would mean it would just take me an hour because I'd be traveling 60 miles an hour. And as you might remember on Route 1 up and away down east in Maine, and there's no north-south indicators on the road, and I got lost on Route 1, and I was about an hour and a half late because you're not doing 60 miles an hour, you're only doing 40 miles an hour, and I got out of the car to ask a man working on his car where I was going. Couldn't understand a word he was saying to me, and then I realized that Stephen King has no imagination. He just goes out as the fog is rolling in and writes things down, and that's how his books get published. Because I was just like, I am in a Stephen King book right here. I have no idea what's happening. Yes.
Well, it does give you.
Again, I didn't have a map.
But it does give you peace of mind, right? Or Google Maps. Some people use Google Maps.
Yeah.
Or Waze. It does give you peace of mind. Sometimes, though, inexplicably, and maybe it's when it's really overcast or something, it disappears.
Yeah, actually, some of them are, I think the Waze has actually got some of the best GPS. I learned that during the Karen Reed trial.
Waze does?
The most reliable GPS. It also, what I find it to be helpful for is telling me what time I'm going to arrive. Because, sometimes in the olden days, if you were sitting in traffic, you would be horrified, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be 45 minutes late. But you're looking and it's like 8 minutes. Okay,
that's the best.
I can deal with the 8 minutes.
Knowing how long it's going to take you to get somewhere. I really like that. You can plan your life very easily. Here's somebody going for nostalgia. I do miss the AAA triptychs. Remember you go get those when you're taking a long trip. Always showed interesting sights along my routes. Right now I use my GPS, but they like the idea of getting those physical triptychs. Kind of like planning your journey somewhere. If you're going to drive cross country or something like that, you get a big AAA triptych from here to California. That's pretty cool.
It is cool. All right, Davida in Vermont. Hi, Davida. Welcome to BPR on GBH.
Hey there. I have to laugh. I feel like I'm at a Council on Aging meeting where everyone's reminiscing.
That's right. We're reminiscing.
I know, aren't we all? So I guess it was about 15 years ago, I got a phone call from a neighbor who had moved into our street about 2 or 3 months ago, well, 2 or 3 months before, and he said he'd pick me up for a meeting, and I was standing outside waiting for him, and when he drove up, I noticed that he was using his GPS to find my house, which was probably, 15 houses down the same street.
Oh, my God. That's pretty pathetic. But you know something? Well, doesn't that underscore how dependent we've all become?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this was a long time ago when I didn't even use GPS, and I didn't understand it, and I still laugh about it today. So.
Okay. Did you think he was kind of, did you think less of him, DeVito, after that incident? Didn't want to go to the meeting with him?
I was a special ed teacher, so I tried to be sensitive to the fact that maybe he had directional issues.
See, she's open-hearted. We like that, DeVito. All right, thanks for calling. We appreciate it. Here's a good point. Maps are tough because if you're lost, how do you find where you are?
That's right.
That is a very difficult thing to do, especially when you're usually lost. You're lost somewhere where there are no signs.
Yeah, and then you have to, of course, find a place to pull over to look at the map. And then if you're two people in the car, then you get a big fight about who's right and who's wrong about the map. 877-301-8970 is the number. We're talking about horror stories from the GPS devices, or whether you really feel more comfortable with the GPS device. I really do feel better with the GPS device.
I love it.
I do love it. I think of how did I ever get anywhere before?
I didn't. I'm just absolutely sure that I spent a ton of time in going the wrong way. I now there's even my route from NECN, NBC 10 Boston to my house, which I've been traveling for about 10 years. Once I started reliably using GPS, I found out I was taking a very long way to get there. That's like a year off my life I could have saved.
Well, you know what else is really cool? When they direct you to go a different way. So instead of being on the highway, like say Route 3 is really crowded or the Mass Pike is really crowded, it would tell you to get off. And then you go winding around through these different towns you've never even seen before.
Yes.
Instead of just sitting there in traffic on a highway, which is really upsetting.
And you know what they also do, the companies do that, if they start rerouting you through residential areas, they don't necessarily suggest that. They are respectful, many of the companies are, of the residents. Like they don't want someone's side street to become an off-flow because the GPS is directing you there. So there is some balance between the residential area and the commuters.
Well, isn't that nice?
Yeah, see? Okay.
Why? That's unusual that they're being thoughtful
they get complaints.
Well, they get complaints.
Right. There's one guy posted, I think, on X years ago that whenever there was a rush somewhere, he was a suburban area with a downtown area, and the cars would just be going by his house, and he's just a little no sidewalk little suburban area because the GPS was directing them that way. So.
Yeah, you see that in traffic coming over the Cape Cod Canal bridges, that they will direct you, and you are going by, but hopefully you are being nice when you go by them.
Okay, should we take one more quick call?
We'll take one more quick call. We got Jared on Zoom.
Okay.
We have Jared on Zoom.
All right, well.
We don't want to keep Jared waiting because, he's very particular, and we don't want to tick him off.
Thanks for all of your calls, everyone. We love talking GPS. And now we're going to go to Jared Bowen, who's got the Culture Show coming up right after us. Hello, Jared.
Okay, Jared.
Apparently, I'm a prima donna.
Oh, my gosh.
A little prima donna. That's right. We don't want to keep you waiting. But we did want to ask you, because I always want to ask you the things we're talking about. GPS saved your life, not saved your life, overuse it. What do you think?
Okay, I'm a conspiracy theorist on Waze because I think that they sometimes send you into the traffic because we have to be little lemmings for them and they have to know which routes are working and which don't.
Suspicious. You're suspicious.
Because there are a couple of times that they've put me in situations that I should not have been in.
Like what?
But you don't know what you avoided.
I do know because if somebody else took another route, I knew. See, you're trying to poke holes, one journalist to another.
There you go.
Could you quickly tell us the example of what happened to you, Jared? We want to know.
Well, no, it just put me in traffic when somebody else who was guided a different way got the clean route.
It's kind of like life. You get guided one way, you get guided the other, you take the wrong advice, you end up in traffic.
It just turns us all into little lemmings driving wherever the app tells us to.
It does. That's true.
Zoe is shaking her head affirmatively and aggressively.
Yeah.
All right, Jared, what's coming up on the Culture Show?
Well, we're talking to Hank Philippi Ryan.
Oh, great. She's so talented.
Extremely talented. Going from being an investigator, Emmy-winning investigative reporter to now
writing all these thrillers.
16 books. Yes.
She's written 16 books?
This is book number 16 that we're going to talk about today, which comes out very shortly. And this one is interesting. It's about a book author out on tour when she encounters a stalker.
Ooh.
So how close to home is this city?
I think I have that one. Isn't that I couldn't have it if it hasn't come out yet.
No, it hasn't come out yet.
I thought I had
Unless
one.
you stole it off my desk.
Maybe I got an early copy because
That's likely.
an influential newspaper person. What do you think?
That's right, maybe. And then we have the Canadian drag queen, Miss Conception, is here.
Mm-hmm.
She is performing throughout the summer in P-Town with her show MAGA. That would be Make America Gay Again. So we'll talk about that. And then Joyce Kulhaywick. We have two big major TV personalities on the show today because Joyce Kulhaywick is here talking about stage and screen.
Wonderful. So you're going to review movies and review plays.
We're going to preview plays, review movies, and a book and a television show Joyce really wants to talk about.
Excellent.
Thank you, Jared. He's
Thank you,
coming up
Jared.
next at the Culture Show.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to another edition of BPR, and thanks to everyone who came here to see us in person and texted and calls. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of the podcast. Check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we've got retired federal judge Nancy Gertner. We've got Princeton's Khalil Gibran Muhammad, sorry about that, and environmentalist Bill McKibben, and we're going to speak with a troupe of Ukrainian young people who have put together a musical about life in wartime with the help of the common man in New Hampshire. We're very excited about that. Our crew is Zoe Matthews, Aidan Connolly, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker, and our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Special thanks to our BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lally, Juan Jose Cadena, and Elena Gonsalves. And thanks to our hosts at the Newsfeed Cafe and our folks across the street at the Lenox Hotel. All right, Marjorie, you want to do it all again tomorrow?
Another spectacular job, Sue. Absolutely. We'll be back again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Culture Show with Jared Bowen starting immediately after us on 89.7 GBH.